Okay. All right. How about you guys? Am I coming through okay now? I've boosted the sound a little bit. Okay, good. I hear I'm fine now. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
my camera might keep freezing. So bear with me, guys. Sorry. This is the I've got to change my cam link here. But yeah. So let's get into this discussion. I think as I said before, a lot of people already know who you are. I think it's starting to become a lot more apparent. Oh, there we go. There we go. And there's my camera again. This is every possible thing that's going wrong
There
here.
you
Let me see.
go. Got the Matrix
Yeah.
going on. Gonna get
Yeah.
hacked.
Here we go. I'm just using my I'm using my there we go.
Well,
My
that has a good feel, actually. I like that. It's a
All
good
right, here
angle.
we go. Yeah. So let's just do this. I'm not even going to bother going through my camera now. But what I was going to say was last time we touched on the issue of or just the question of why you wear a mask, and I think it's becoming a lot more apparent as we go along here why you need to wear a mask. I mean,
Right.
aside from the McCarthyism 2.0 and the witch hunt going on in the U.S. and all that kind of stuff, look at that article that came out. I just want to touch on this for a second. I know this isn't on
Sure.
our itinerary, but the article that came out about the Barretts, what was it? The Times in
Oh,
England.
yeah. I can't believe that. I mean, it was just really, of course, we can't say slanderous, but you know how Western press does it. They really inflate things like China's funding that. I couldn't believe the headline when I seen it. And they just target, they posted their faces all over the place. And
Yeah.
even on YouTube, you're not safe anymore from
Yeah.
these sorts of
Just so
sources.
everybody knows what we're talking about. Yeah. So they did a big full page article in the Times calling the Barrett channel funded by the Chinese government. I actually found out first from a friend in Guangzhou. He sent me the link. And I just saw the title of the link saying YouTubers in China, these YouTubers are funded by the Chinese government. And I didn't even open the link yet. And I said to him, I said, I can tell you that's BS. I said, I
Yeah.
can tell you as one of the biggest self-proclaimed Wu Maos there are in China, I would know if YouTubers were being funded by the Chinese government. And I said, that's bullshit. And then I opened it up. Oh, the Barretts. I said, this is total BS. And I looked into it, and it's just look at the article. These guys are quoting ASPI, and they're quoting these
Hmm.
kinds of people
Hmm.
funded by the military industrial complex for an accurate narrative on China. And they're slandering YouTubers who are actually in China on the ground witnessing things and just disregarding them as saying, oh, they must be paid because they're not following our agenda. Now, these guys,
I
of
mean,
course, are working for the Rupert Murdoch media. He's a
yeah.
guy who owns such a large amount of media that doesn't even make money in some cases in Australia, as there was a recent campaign to kind of break up his organization a little bit. And it's for the sole purpose for his political and corporate agendas. And so these guys are just absolute. They're the ones who are the shills, who are being paid by nefarious
Yep,
sources.
yep,
And
that's
it's
a good
like,
way of saying it. I mean, it's really frustrating how I wouldn't be surprised if, for example, BBC or any of the Western outlets start to do documentaries on YouTubers in China. And of course, it's almost like the typical North Korean documentary and the dystopian sort of twisted narrative that they put on good faith sort of people that are just exploring China, let alone, I mean, here's the thing. My channel just really dives into the political aspects of China, and we really, really, we don't shy away from all that. Barrett and everybody, they touch upon it, but most of it is just exploring China and talking about it in a positive way. And, it doesn't even get as political. I mean, there are some videos that they post up, like talking about the tensions and things like that, which are really, really insightful, I say. But I really think that it's unfair, uh, obviously unfair, but it's obviously has an agenda. I wouldn't be surprised if the next hit piece is from Adrian Zenz. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to, get, what was his name again that you interviewed? The guy Aslan,
oh, Arslan. Yeah.
Arslan. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised if they try to set up a debate with him. And he hasn't with Jerry the biker, and he hasn't even been to Xinjiang more times than Jerry has.
Yeah, well, yeah, the Coda. There was a news network, Coda, who ran a hit piece on Jerry, and luckily
Ugh,
Jerry recorded the whole thing, and you could see. I broke that down on my
yeah,
Twitter to show you how the interview happened and then how it was actually reported. Like
yeah,
Jerry responded directly to some of the things she was saying, like, "Well, the UN says this," and she's like, "Well, no, they don't," and he gave her like, boom, 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 the facts. And then she
right.
still ran it with this stupid foreigner who's shilling for the Chinese government. And Coda is interesting too because their founder, one of their founders, said that we will never take any government funded money. We're funded by the people, and so we're independent and we're genuine. You look on the NED's website, and they
Mm,
received grants from the NED. Surprise,
surprise,
surprise
surprise.
there.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And the annoying thing is these people. I looked through some of the stuff they tweeted before, and they retweeted the stuff like the big scare of the seeds that were being sent from the Chinese. These killer seeds or something like that. I don't know if you remember that
Uh-huh.
story. There were little packets of seeds that were showing up in people's mail. And it was from like they were buying stuff off of Alibaba Express, and I think it was a seller who was like giving them free. It was a free gift or something like that, and it was painted as this nefarious kind of mysterious thing that's showing up in the mail, kind of like the anthrax scare that they were using before when they were trying to pump everybody up for war. And like
Wow.
these journalists are reposting these things, and you
You
know,
know, it's very
yeah.
interesting that you say that too. I actually just ran across this video. I should send it to you. I actually received a Twitter message about that. It it was a former CIA reporter that basically was exposing how the media is either subconsciously or consciously working with the CIA to pump negative stories. And they basically said, particularly on the Vietnam War, but elsewhere, they uh, they they don't even have to have reporters on the payroll to pump these stories out. They literally just tell them, and they use their own either authority complex or authority figure, status as somebody that they can verify. And he said the easiest thing is just to say that they got it from a source, and that's it. You just have to believe them, and they don't have to divulge anything further. It goes so deep on how either Rupert Murdoch and his cronies that are trying to sell a narrative, all the way down to the special interests like the ASPI, Adrian Zenz, Human Rights Watch, and everything else. I mean, it's really nefarious. And I was going to
Yeah,
say,
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, the oh my god, I can't believe I forgot his name. Manufacturing consent.
Oh, Noam Chomsky.
Noam Chomsky. There was an interview with him many years ago where he was talking to a reporter. I don't know if it was BBC or something like that. And the BBC reporter was asking, saying, "Well, how do you know I'm self-censoring, and how do you know I'm following the narrative, and this isn't really truly, independent, or that I'm deliberately doing this?" And he said, "Oh no, I believe you. You believe everything you're saying. I'm just
Right,
saying that if you believed something different, you wouldn't be sitting here."
right.
So it is a very well crafted narrative. And the annoying thing too is these guys, they're going to continue on. They're jumping on this bandwagon. They know it's going to get them a lot of attention, and people are going to forget later. People are going to forget when this is over, just like they forgot
Mhm.
who were the exact uh, people pushing the weapons of mass destruction story the most. I mean, they should lose a lot of credibility as a journalist, but they just forget and they move on. And so that's what these guys are going to do. They're going to jump on this bandwagon later on. And I think it's really important we don't forget who these people are, to know that
Yeah.
they are. And on that note, let me. I think I got a picture of them here. Let me see here. Um,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it is
uh,
really disgusting how how the West is able to forget, but I don't really think it's, the people's fault in forgetting. It's more the media and the culture here that really tries to turn and churn lies after lies after lies without even witnessing the hypocrisy with all that. I think online it's a little bit of a better battleground, so to speak, when people can call them out and people can freely antagonize. Hey, you say this about the Iraq War. You said this about, the incubator, testimony and all that stuff. And it wasn't true. Why should we believe in Xinjiang and everything else? But, at the same time, look at what Congress did. They just, I think they just passed a ban on cotton from Xinjiang and tomatoes from Xinjiang, and it's really frustrating that now this lie is trickling into real world repercussions to the point where it's going to be harming. I don't. It's going to be holding back economies rather than building the necessary bridges.
Well, there's a more important thing there too. Not only does it do that, it affects the very people they're pretending to help. It's hitting
Exactly.
the Xinjiang economy, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to create discontent in that economy if they can disrupt it somehow, take away jobs from Xinjiang. Who's going to be losing jobs in Xinjiang? It's the Uyghurs who are going to be losing jobs in Xinjiang.
Yeah.
It's designed to do that. Sanctions are designed to create maximum suffering throughout a public to cause them to rise up against their government. It's not an organic thing.
But
It's
China
very
now, I mean, its economy is so dynamic, and it's really with not only their Belt and Road Initiative, but now that they are getting used to the fact that they don't have to rely on the United States and the big, trade deal that they did with the EU. I think the EU is just starting to wake up with what's going on with the United States, especially what happened with the Capitol and everything. That there's been a shift, at least economy wise, and how they need to really build relations with China in order to kind of stay in the economic game. If they don't, they're going to be really, I mean, some people in the West is really trying to isolate themselves and have this isolationist policy, when in reality, back in the 90s, they were pushing this globalization narrative for open markets and whatnot. And now they're trying to tighten up or restrict their own trades and economies to themselves.
yeah.
China has just taken advantage of this so much and is trying to push for more openness and tolerance, but also because that they're benefiting from that as well. And it's really interesting how they can make a profit or generate a surplus with other countries that aren't even at the economic level of the United States.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. No, it's remarkable. Here we go. Before we continue on, here they
Yeah,
are. I
yeah,
just found a photo of them. These are the guys.
yeah.
These are the guys who just wrote that piece and tried to, and quoted the military-industrial complex as a reliable source on
Surprise,
China
surprise.
information. Yeah. There's actually, before we continue, there's somebody who really wants me to see something. He's repeated it a number of times. I noticed is guess who interviewed Arslan Hidayat. And I saw that. There was a guy. I don't want to mention them. They're the two kind of vloggers who use green screens. They interviewed Arslan. It's not a surprise that they interviewed him. He's going to say things that they like. I think keep in mind he was on my channel also, and
Yeah,
that is me interviewing somebody that disagrees with my position.
right.
I think that would be much more useful. But a lot of things transpired after my interview with Arslan. One is that his father-in-law is making, he's recording commercials, he's going to galas, he's doing all this stuff, he's enjoying his life. He admitted on Carl's podcast that his father-in-law deleted him off of WeChat. And he's like, this guy doesn't want, I mean, it's clear he doesn't want anything to do with him, and he's not missing. And then furthermore, the other thing that transpired is that he had this post removed on Twitter. He recorded a video saying that he hopes Allah, judges
Right.
family members. He basically wants
Crazy
to
stuff.
destroy innocent people in
Yeah.
China. He said it in black and white. So
Crazy.
this guy is a terrorist. There's no, he is a
Like,
terrorist.
how
And
can you even like, he went on your show literally saying, oh, maybe we can advocate for a secular nation, even though a majority of those separatists don't want that. But then at the same time, he posted that kind of video. I was like, whoa, what? This was
Mask
not showing.
off. Mask
Yeah.
off. And so
Yeah.
when you get people to respond to the guy who's asking me about did I see who interviewed him, I mean, I'm not surprised. It shows what these guys are about. When they know that this is who this is a terrorist, this is somebody who's going to say things, anti things about China, and that's how I make my living. It really wasn't. It really wasn't surprising to see him bring somebody who wants to wish death upon innocent people in China on his show. So
Right.
that's all I'm going to say
Right.
about that. But I think some of these topics we can cover, at least on some of the stuff that I've been reading, because that's what we're going to get into a little bit later about what we've been reading and the content we've been looking at. But what I want to do before we go there, though, is I want to talk a little bit about what happened in the U.S.
Sure.
I'm very interested to hear your take on it. I watched an hour-long Michael Moore video where he was doing his statement on what he thinks happened. Um,
Huh.
for me, there's a lot of stuff that isn't adding up. But if you want to talk a little bit about it and your ideas on it
Yeah.
first, I'm going to ask you some questions about some things that I find suspicious that you might not necessarily empathize with or think I'm overthinking it. But we'll get to that. We'll
Sure.
get to that in a second. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it was kind of shocking to see. I mean, I think everybody knew that there was a protest going on, but to the extent that they would do the, get inside the Capitol and everything, it really fanned a flame with everybody. However, I mean, there is really a lot of thinking back on the incidents and what happened and what gave rise to it. Um, I think there is now a genuine fear and a cautious but conscious effort from the left now to watch their step and um, see what happens when they aren't organized the way that they're organized. And it's kind of convoluted. I'm sorry to be so convoluted with it because um, for the left, we were hoping something like this, not something like this would happen, obviously, in the Capitol, but the change that we were demanding and how ferocious we were fighting for it. For example, BLM, when we tried to do the protests and everything, but the enforcement from the state was, my God, it was there. The presence was there. We seen rows of National Guard up on the Capitol protecting the entrances and whatnot. But then we see a video of the Capitol Police literally egging on protesters to come inside and everything. And some pictures they had like plastic handcuffs and really trying to uh, egg on. I think, and I just heard the news that the guy with the horns, with the black and or not the blue and red face mask and everything, who was up on the stage, committed suicide. Um, quote unquote suicide to the chest. Yeah, I need to confirm that, but I
Okay.
think
Okay.
that's what
Good.
happened. Let me actually, just to make sure, Google that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I
horns.
didn't hear that. That must be some pretty new news.
Yeah. Uh, face painted Capitol trespasser. Yeah. And that's another thing too. The media is not calling it the way that they need to call it. He wasn't a trespasser.
Yeah, yeah,
You
that's
know,
interesting.
it
Always
was
how,
something else.
yeah, um, you know, the thing is like while you're looking for that, the thing that is just weird for me is that obviously they were just let into the Capitol building. They were
Right.
let in there. It was, if you compare the images to the when the Black Lives Matter protests were on, how many people, how many guards were out there, how well equipped they were. And you talk about you hear when Michael Moore talks about, he's saying he's been in the Capitol building many times, and he said, you know what, you don't just walk in there, and he says, and also you don't just find Nancy Pelosi's office, like you don't just know where that is. And so there's a lot of suspicious things going on, but the overwhelming conclusion is that sorry guys, you're saying my voice is too low again. Let me try to see if I can boost this. The overwhelming conclusion is that let me boost this up. Here we go. That this was, Trump let them in, or something like that, where it was like,
Yeah.
But you know what? Trump has lost a lot of friends. I mean, there's a few senators who are still, going down with the ship, but I mean, you look at Colin Powell, is supporting Biden now, and George
Right.
Bush and everybody. It's almost like it's a one-party system now, with everybody unifying on the most important, what is going to be the most important parts of how the U.S. does foreign policy. And one thing that probably made him a lot of enemies. I'm going to pull up a picture here. As
Sure.
many things
And
as
I
there
just
are
sent you.
to, yeah, go
Sorry
ahead.
to interrupt, but I just sent you the article. I don't think it was actually the Horn guy. It was
Okay.
Christopher Stanton, Georgia man, who was arrested but committed suicide after a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chest.
Okay.
Yeah, so but people are kind of reacting towards all this, and I was even talking to my friend out in Kansas City, Missouri, and he just said that they have signs, FBI signs saying anybody that has information about the Capitol riots, please call this number. I wanted to get a picture of it, but they're really, really cracking down. But like you said, they were basically, it was really surprising how they were let in. And the resistance was really nothing compared to the resistance that we see in other protests. And there was, they're starting to run a lot of investigative articles about how the soldiers, the military, the police has this sympathy for what they are protesting and what basically for Trump and the racism and everything that like that. I mean, we all know there was that FBI investigation back in, I think, 2, 3 years ago that said there are legitimate racist organizations within our police forces. They have tattoos of white power and things like that while they're
Yep.
uh, on duty. It's
Well,
absolutely
yeah.
disgusting.
Even the officer who was killed, he was actually a Trump supporter. That's what I read on some other sites. I don't know. I mean, again, media. You don't know what's true and what's not. But the thing is
Right.
what I wanted to say, with enough people against Trump, and then one of the things they're saying is, why aren't these people being pursued faster? There was one person who said that what they might be doing is waiting to really hit these guys hard after Trump is gone, so that he can't give amnesty to them, or whatever it is, pardon them. But I think there's enough of the system working against Trump. And what I was going to say was, as many things as there are to dislike about Trump, and there are endless numbers of things to dislike about Trump, this is one thing to keep in mind that would anger the system. And let me pull this
Yeah.
up here. You've seen this picture?
Let me see. Yep, yep, yep.
The wars. The wars. He sure, he continued, doing terrible things in the regions that the U.S. were already in, and the
Right,
mask came off when he was talking about Syria. The fact that, we're there for the oil, we're protecting the oil,
right.
in a very, very American way. But he didn't really expand conflicts. He gave a good effort. Potentially, you could say he gave a good effort to creating a conflict with Iran. Um,
Right.
but he kind of, from a military industrial complex, point of view, or these corporations that benefit from the disruption that they cause around the world, he didn't really do a good job in that arena.
And that's the
Eh,
thing. He ran on a non-interventionist sort of, we're going to pull the troops back. We're going to do all this, and even though he really didn't do that. But that I tweeted this out saying, as much destruction as chaos Trump has caused around the world with the protests and supporting, governmental oppositional groups and whatnot, he wasn't an expert. And that's why I'm kind of really, really cautious about Joe Biden, because we know how much of an expert he is in, doing wars around the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you've got Colin Powell on your side, that's
Yeah.
you know, and you look at who he's stacking his his, advisory board with. But onto the main point, what I was thinking is, what if, because you know what, to censor the president of the United States, what people call the most powerful people on earth, to
Uh,
censor that level of a person, you need a pretty damn good excuse, especially in a country where freedom is the most important thing. Freedom of speech. We don't censor like China does. And all of a sudden, you've got a situation on your hands where you feel like this guy is dangerous. He's you know he's potentially going to cause a lot of chaos in this country. We have to find a way to censor him. And so, while he might not have explicitly encouraged those people to come into the Capitol Hill, and that's probably debatable also whether his words incited them or not. What
right.
if? And I don't like conspiracy theories, but I'm just going to put a what if out there. What if it was actually the people who are against Trump that made sure that these guys got in to make an example, to make a situation where they would be justified to make the ultimate sacrifice, free speech, to censor their president off of all of these platforms? Because once that happened, they unsuspended him from Twitter for just long enough for him to upload a
Mm,
video saying, you know what, we are going to transition to Biden. Everybody, calm down. Then, boom, right after that, a very lined up banning on Facebook, on Twitter. Obviously, the Parler, the right wing version of Twitter or whatever it is, I haven't looked at it, but it's a very
right.
right wing app, was banned off of the Twitter App Store, and then Amazon AWS takes it off of their servers. It's like this very it fell in place really quickly after that. So was it really like, was it potentially a deliberate situation where
I mean,
they
here's
let
the
these people in,
thing.
they made an example out of some of them? But yeah, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the establishment clearly doesn't like Trump, and that's why they're aligning more with Joe Biden. And there's this, I remember one of the philosophers that I follow, Slavoj Žižek, he was surprised in 2016 the type of coalition that Hillary Clinton was running on. She was, she banded the LBGT liberal community with Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest oppressors of LBGT, and you had these contradicting groups, special interest groups, but they all sort of created an establishment field to uh, to lay her foundation, her type of liberalism. Trump was anti-establishment on the conservative side, obviously, and that fanned a lot of flames. Now you have this really anti-press, anti-science, anti-establishment movement that no matter how many facts or what is presented to them, if it goes against their narrative, it's not going to be believed. And these corporations, Facebook and social media groups, are social media businesses that have millions upon millions of outlets to spread this sort of message. It's well, first of all, it's a little too late. Like, he was building this flame more and more. He was caging children. That didn't ban him. He was bombing children. He was splitting up families. He was spreading lies about different countries, non-Western countries. Nothing was banned. And then he was talking about the vaccines and everything like that, and all these conspiracy theories that were anti-science and anti-facts were building on his base, but just giving this really big notion uh, of pride, of a movement. And it really does show something, that a corporation can censor the president of the United States, that a business can step in like that. And obviously for their own interests, now that they got the American establishment and the majority of Americans to support them. Yeah, good job. We don't want to support this guy anymore because look what he did at the Capitol. But never mind what he did to, locking up children, splitting up families, and everything else like that. It's really an American-centric sort of feel. And now that the establishment can say, okay, now we got him. Now we did it. Whether or not it was planned, I mean, I don't know. It would be interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if that may have been the case. But now that the pieces are falling into place, it really is. It kind of reminds me of I don't know if you ever seen The Hunger Games, the last movie. So I don't want to really spoil the ending, but
Nah,
spoiler
yeah,
alert.
that's okay. Yeah, that's
Okay,
okay.
everybody, spoiler. If you haven't seen the last Hunger Games, I'm going to reveal the ending. So, President Snow, he was trying to gather all the children in his palace, and they were lined up on the gates. And then all of a sudden, we see one of the military planes drop the parachute, and everything explode, and they killed the children. And he gets captured, and Katniss Everdeen, the main heroine of the story, her sister died in the bombing. And Katniss was able to meet with President Snow after he got captured, and he was like, "Wasn't that a brilliant plan from your leader?" And it's like, "What do you mean your leader? You did that." And it's like, "Oh no, I didn't do that. Um, I would never lie to you," and we agreed on that. But it was brilliant because they thought it was my last line of defense to bomb the entrance, but in reality, they wanted to make it seem that I'm a heartless guy that would bomb children and just to defend myself. And I was like, wow, okay, and that's just that kind of showed the power dynamic of how it shifts, in these sorts of things. And I'm more or less sort of interested in how that may have developed under different ideologies, different groups, and whatnot, and whether that was necessary. But it really does show what power complexes and what establishments may do to one up each other to gain an influence.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think we've gotten in this political dynamic to a point where I don't know. I mean, on my side of the aisle or my side of the spectrum, I think we really can just reveal the truth about everything that's going on and just be honest about what we need to advocate for. And I think China is doing that too. I always remember there was a saying that you stop telling lies about me, I'll stop telling the truth about you.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the perfect diplomacy of what China is doing here. So, long story short, yeah, I mean, whatever the corporations and establishments are doing after the Capitol riots, it's obviously benefiting them in their favor and tainting Trump's legacy to a very, very negative degree. But not surprised. And obviously, this should have happened a long time ago if they were actually genuine about it. But we know that they're not. And whether or not this was actually planned on their part, it still looks bad that they are now doing it rather than before.
Right, right. And one of the other things also that happened throughout this thing that might get lost in the whole kind of situation here is what was revealed about some of the people who we thought were the most progressive, liberals in America.
Hmm.
Obviously, with and this is maybe going a little bit off of topic, but were you following the AOC force the vote kind of a thing?
Yes, Jimmy Dore. Yes, he was
Yeah, because
really calling them out.
yeah, so basically, Jimmy Dore was saying that they had an opportunity with withholding their vote from Nancy Pelosi to force a vote on Medicare for all, which is important,
Yep,
obviously, especially during a pandemic. And she refused to do it. And then,
yep.
she continually contradicted herself after that, saying, "Oh, you know what? Voting to impeach Trump might not do anything, but it's important for the sake of the American people." Well, what about the Medicare vote? Even if it was
Yeah,
even if you think it was pointless. And then
exactly.
obviously, and then all of her other language, which has been showing up for a while now, is in support of kind of American imperialism around the world,
Right.
and
I mean,
overthrowing governments, which is
she had that picture with the Bolivian oppositional groups trying to get her on their side with the Bolivian flag. And I don't know if she cheered the return of Evo Morales and Moss when they won the election down here. But again, it's the hypocrisy that the when I always remember this line. There was this rapper called Immortal Technique, and he's really radical, but at the same time, not really. He said some things that I disagree with sometimes, but he really did say that it's not the system that you attempt to change, as well-meaning as you do. It's the system that changes you, and you'll soon make up your own reasoning to justify the system in attempts to change it. Like, not to go to another movie, but and again, many people may disagree with this movie, but the Star Wars movie, the second one, or the second to last movie, when Rey and what's his name, the evil guy, the other guy with the red lightsaber,
Oh
he was
yeah.
Ren, something Ren, or I don't know.
Kylo Ren. You're talking.
Kylo Ren. There you go. There you
Well,
go.
is Kylo Ren? Kylo Ren turned into Darth Vader, didn't he? Or
Yeah, that's the guy. And they were fighting each other like they were fighting each other for the lightsaber or something like that. And he offered, look, join me. We can change it. We can try to reform this. We can try to, if we can do this together, let's get rid of the Sith. Let's get rid of everybody, and we can rule all this together. And, obviously we know that's compromise doesn't go anywhere, because the system in play doesn't really help the people when it's already formatted for those on top, and I
Right.
really think that if AOC and now I'm calling them the fraud squad, if they continue trying to pursue this path, and now you're seeing the fall of the DSA. The DSA was supposed to be this hope, this bastion for progressives, and now it's just another liberal entity that's not even liberal, a centrist entity that's kind of fallen.
You know what's concerning also is that now that you see this consolidation of all the worst elements of the U.S. political system, like I said, George Bush and Colin Powell and everybody coming together like a big happy family. The other thing that's happening too is that the people who were really strong Trump supporters, who see the Republican Party also as having betrayed him and them, a lot of them I'm seeing online are saying that they're not going to vote. They've lost. The Republican Party has lost their vote, and they're either going to not vote anymore at all, or they're going to just go independent or something like that.
Interesting.
So. What that happened, that has made, this whole situation has made the Liberal Party, which isn't very liberal, the Democrat Party, way more powerful, because the Republicans are going to lose all these votes, and you're essentially moving towards, like I said, what looks like a one-party system, but far more scary when you consider what does America do with their consolidated power. A lot of people can make criticisms about what is essentially a one-party system, depending on how you look at it in China, but more or less you can say that. But what are they doing with that? They're bringing their poor people out of poverty. They're increasing the living standard of their people and everything like that. But a single party system, which will happen with manipulation, which it might be what we've seen going on, it looks far more scary in the U.S., especially when
that's the thing.
Yeah.
I think the power dynamic of this, we always had. I always say we always had this one party system with two heads. We had the Democrats and the Republicans, so to speak. One, I always say one sets up the pins and holds it back, while the other, pushes it ahead. For example, when Obama set up the cages at the border, and they said, "Oh, he never used them or anything," but when Trump gets in, look what happens, and we never. And then the Republicans say, "We never invaded, at least under Trump, we didn't invade anything, but you didn't pull out either, and you didn't change anything either, and you just empowered a lot more private interests and things like that." And I was gonna say, I was kind of going through the China Mirage book, actually, and fascinating stuff. Ever since the 18th, 19th century, these elites have been trying to rule the world, so to speak, especially in China, with the Roosevelt in the opium trade and everything, trying to, yeah, that's it, trying to make their riches at the exploitation of non-Western people. It was, and all the
Well,
way up.
yeah, let's get into that because we're getting a little bit into the topic of the books we've read, and we know that we've both read the China Mirage.
Yep.
It's one that I've introduced to you, but it really was quite a remarkable book. And actually, the thing that led me to it was a one-star review where somebody was so
Huh.
offended that it challenged everything he learned growing up in his
Wow.
Western history books. And I said, that's exactly what I want to hear. That's
There you go. There you go.
because it does not look like what we read in our history books. But that was
Right.
like you said, yeah. I mean, not many people know how much of American infrastructure was, built on pushing drugs to China. Everybody knows about the
Right.
British, bringing opium in, but they have no idea about how much of American infrastructure was supported by the opium trade, and
Oh,
how
and
many
they just built their empire. Like, I had no idea until, hearing this book, I had no idea how the Roosevelts really got their wealth, but through the opiate trade and through the exploitation of China. And they just kept that imperialist gravy train going when they were pushing this Christianity effort in trying to Christianize Asia, using Japan as kind of their pawn to. It was very interesting. I was listening in the early 19th, 20th century, or the late 19th century to early 20th century, how Roosevelt kept it all the secret on how he was supporting China on the down low when they were trying to invade Korea and imperialize Korea. And then when they actually did it, they purposefully delayed the note because Korea said, "Hey, we have a treaty with the United States that's protecting us," blah blah blah. And he really, Roosevelt really pushed the notion that um, China should have Japan should have a Monroe Doctrine on Asia. I was like, that's incredible. And look what happened in World War II, and what America supported, the blowback from that. And
Yeah, yeah. You
it,
remember when the president also was deliberately trying to get around the sanctions because they were providing the oil to Japan that they were
right,
using to expand their empire,
right,
and they put this ban in place. Congress put a ban in place that they couldn't sell, the air grade, jet grade fuel to
right,
Japan
right,
anymore.
right,
And then what the president did was he changed it at the last minute so that it went to, they couldn't provide anything lower than I can't remember what it was, like 94 octane fuel. And he deliberately changed it to that or anything above 94. And he deliberately changed it because to that number because he knew that the Japanese airplanes could run on 93 octane. So it's like they weren't really,
That's right. And I
that's
remember it
expensive.
was even more nefarious with the UK because they just categorized all their planes as unarmed and armed. And what the Japanese would do, just buy the unarmed and then arm them later. It was just really how they would just skirt around all this just so they can exploit Asia in their own way and use uh, and how they use Japan, not only Japan, but they also got into how they backed. I have trouble pronouncing his name. The nationalists in China that were fighting Mao, the leader.
Oh, Chiang
Ch-
Kai-shek.
yeah, Chiang Kai-shek, and how they were really trying to bolster him up. But at the same time, he had his own special interests in the United States, trying to sell them on this grand story that, oh, he reading the Bible every day, God is, all this stuff, and just selling the story.
And opened up a Bible manufacturing facility to make the Bibles
Right,
for them, which he made so much money on, and
got
it was
wealth
all
on them.
BS. And
Yeah,
that's what interested America was that they could Christianize China. Um, it really was remarkable. And then, of course, they were providing equipment and support to Chiang Kai-shek to fight the Japanese, but he was
right,
storing it all up for his civil war against the communists.
right.
Um,
right,
which lost him a lot of support in China also, saying that, no, we're being invaded by the Japanese. And he's like, well, that can wait. Obviously they came
right.
together at certain points after there was one guy, I forget his name, who basically kidnapped him and forced him to sign a treaty with the communists to fight the Japanese.
There you
And
go.
afterwards, Chiang Kai-shek put that guy under house arrest for, I can't remember how many, 20 years, 30 years. Even when he fled to Taiwan, he took him to Taiwan and kept him under house arrest in Taiwan, for
Oh man.
pushing the idea that Chinese people should unify to fight against the Japanese, who are raping and pillaging through China. I mean,
Right, right.
it was really eye opening.
And just yeah, and that was the thing. I really do, after hearing this book, I really do recommend everybody to actually give it a listen, because it really does show the dynamics on how far Western powers would go to for their expansion and imperialism. It really does give this
Yeah.
picture that they're not stopping.
Yeah,
And
while you're talking, I'm going to quickly do
uh,
something with my camera. So you keep talking,
go
and
ahead.
then I'm just going to be 2 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. But like I was saying, this book really does show a um, a really great portrait of how Western powers try to take over Asia, and really take over in general, for their own benefit, their own imperialism. And the most surprising, going back to this sort of Monroe Doctrine of Asia, the United States was just trying to make Japan its extension of itself, and when that failed, they were just continuing their conquest without Japan, looking for influence elsewhere, through the Christian missionaries, through reactionary nationalist leaders, and everything else. And I actually talked to Carl a little bit of uh, during the Civil War, how it was and how they were fighting off the Japanese, at least what his family was doing involved with that. And they were really trying to go for this banner of unity to fend off the Japanese. But those that were living in cities, because they were the KMT's strongholds, that was the underground. They didn't have any communists that were underground in the cities when Japan was occupying them. So in order to really uh, have the anti-Japanese sentiments to get them out and stop colonizing China, they would have to join the KTM. However, or KMT. However, obviously that caused some problems when the Civil War started and everything, and people that had no choice in joining the KMT during that time, uh, tried to join the communists and tried to join the communist revolution, because like, hey, we're on your side. We were anti-imperialist. We wanted the Japanese out. It's like, well, why are you a card-carrying member of the Nationalist Party? Blah blah blah. And I don't want to say too much because Carl explains it better than I do. But it was really fascinating how people were kind of pinned against each other, and how the United States it's still attempted to broker the peace treaty between these two parties, and try to benefit from that. It was it's just really eye-opening. I really wanted to thank you for actually recommending that book, because it
Yeah, it
truly
was.
does
Yeah,
show.
it really was interesting, And for James Bradley, actually, his father was apparently one of the guys in the famous photos that lifted the American flag over Iwo Jima.
That's right. That's
So
right.
yeah, yeah. But the most interesting parts for me was um, how much they really wanted to assimilate China.
Mm.
And like this kind of I'm more of a Star Trek fan than a Star Wars fan. That's probably
Oh
you
yeah.
figure that.
Next gen or
It's like
original?
Next Gen is the big one that I've seen
There you
every
go.
episode like 2-3 times, and like it's like America is like the Borg collective,
Yeah.
going around wanting to assimilate people, and it reminds me of I like the story in the book of The Good Earth. The movie
Mm.
they made, the Good Earth, where they superimposed American emotions onto Chinese, and they couldn't even get Chinese actors to play it because I think during that time there was already the Chinese Exclusion Act.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but it was this picture where they wanted to paint these Chinese that were so much like them, with white picket fences and stuff like that, and this idea that this is the China that they're hoping to create also with the Christianization of it. And one of the quotes actually directly in the book was from, I have it here, Reverend Arthur Henderson Smith. He said, the manifold needs of China will be met permanently, completely, only by Christian civilization. I mean, how arrogant is that?
Yeah, I think they tried to do that with the natives in the Americas, and look what happened with that.
Yeah.
Uh, it just ends up in massacre, disease, killings, and genocide. It's been a story that's attempted to be reformatted and re-glorified, but in reality, it's just more of the same. It's just
So
it's a
yeah.
conquest for the benefit of those on top.
Yeah, and you can imagine now, with a superiority complex of that level, um, and people who still have it, you can imagine how offensive it is to them that China's succeeding on their own terms.
Yep. Yep.
That what's happening completely contradicts what Reverend Arthur Henderson Smith said, and they're
Right.
doing it their own way and successfully. This is one of the
Right.
most offensive things that somebody with a superiority complex or somebody who's racist, somebody like that would. Yeah, they just find it really offensive,
But it's just symptomatic. It's embedded. Like their success, Western success, heavily relied on a certain aspect of elitism on top and brutality, using brutal methods in order to expand their influence. And influence was just such an important dynamic in their hegemony, in their conquest, in keeping and preserving their power. Whereas you would now have China that is not only generating so much wealth, but it's not trying to conquer anybody. It's not trying to imperialize. It's not doing anything. I was going to actually say, so there was this clip that I actually used in one of my books from Giannis I
oh yeah,
forget his
Varoufakis.
Varoufakis, yeah, and he did a great video countering this older woman, saying, what are you talking about? They're not imperializing. They're far more humane than the United States in building ports and building infrastructure and helping them
Yeah,
to
that was
do
a good
that.
video.
You know, and I always say that China really tossed out that old model of influence that the West has always had on the global South and other countries, and to be challenging them through peace and development rather than guns and weapons is such a fantastic and just a hit a little bit of irony to
Yeah,
for
yeah,
their success.
this same going back to the superiority complex and tying it into this, there's no possible way that American society is willing to learn something from China. Also, whether it be domestically on how to deal with poverty, whether it be internationally on what is a better method of international cooperation, and this is directly leading to America's downfall. This is directly leading to
Yeah,
why America is continually going down, is because they can't possibly learn from anybody else, even
no,
when there's very clearly a new way of doing things, and it's so important for them to control the narrative, and that's why they banned the HBO PBS documentary on
yep.
or PBS pulled a documentary on poverty. Alleviation, because it showed China in a too positive of a light. Back in going to the book that
So
we were reading, the China Mirage,
yeah,
William Worthy. We're talking about William Worthy, the journalist who went to China against American rules.
right.
Also interviewed Fidel Castro. Eisenhower took his passport away. And said,
Yeah,
okay, no, it's so important for them to control the narrative, and so it's
right.
interesting to see that America definitely does have censorship, and it's a dangerous kind of
Yeah,
censorship.
and it's just
Yeah.
it it almost reminds me of when Michael Parenti was talking about in his book uh Julius Caesar, um and how it really showed that the narrative of democracy was really crafted by the elites rather than the people, and how history as a whole really puts this ideal twist of these values that we try to chase, at least in the West: democracy, equality, freedom, and everything. But it's all a facade because it actually doesn't take place. When reading a little bit more about Deng Xiaoping and Mao, they were really adamant of having actual democracy, actual, access for the people to be represented, or at least be represented through the party. And the facade of freedom of speech and freedom, it's more of a cloak or an excuse for these elites to continue their rule and justify their rule through basically pouring billions of dollars in the airways to just brainwash people to thinking this is the right way and the only way, because they're the socialists don't know economics, or the socialists are trying to take away my toothbrushes and everything like that. It just doesn't and it doesn't equate when you actually see China developing so fast. I always say, I talked to Carl a little bit about this too. Like, when I always find it sort of lazy and arrogant when capitalist and liberal economists call China capitalism, and the party is just trying to use capitalism to keep and preserve their power. When in reality, when you actually read this this wonderful plan that was put in place by Deng Xiaoping, and using markets and everything, and in the 1980s, they were talking about 2050. They were talking about the year 2000. They were talking about how they would generate all this growth for their GNP and everything else. And the party committed to that growth. And the trajectory since the 1980s has always been up for China. And we can't really say that, especially what happened in 2008 and after the coronavirus. We can't say that about the West. We can't say that about what happened and how growth is being stunted, at least for the working class. Our infrastructure is falling apart. Like, I was delayed on, using the BART, the subways here, for so long, and it sounds like, uh, it always sounds like every time we go into a tunnel, they're screaming and screeching and all these things. Whereas when I look at China's bullet trains and everything else, I'm just shaking my head like, what the hell, Um, it's such a disappointing aspect of where our society is going, and how you can truly see the symptoms of decay, whereas you can see the symptoms of growth in China.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it really is remarkable. Actually, there's a book that, going back to the priorities of America and how it deals with people internationally. I'm going to talk about the next book that I've been reading. I'm not all the way through it yet, but before we
Sure,
leave the topic of the China Mirage, one of the things that was
sure.
striking for me and unsettling for me was that obviously, back when this stuff was happening, um, nobody ever possibly imagined that America could provoke Japan into attacking the U.S. That was just
Right,
something that was everybody would say, there's no way this is going to happen. And
right.
it happened. And I don't think that necessarily means we should expect everything and anything in terms of China eventually reacting. I don't think that'll happen. It's not in their DNA. They haven't,
Yep.
um, gone into other countries like the U.S. has, and that was while Japan was building up its military and invading. That's what they were doing at that
Right,
point in time. But
right.
from the terms of saying that a conflict wouldn't happen, whether it be America started or America attacked first or created a false flag operation in the South Pacific, the
Right.
South China Sea, that worries me a bit. That
Mhm.
something, that anything is really possible, and tensions are really starting to get pretty high, and I think it's only going to get worse with Biden if who he's choosing to stack his staff with is any indication.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I mean, and it's kind of worrisome. I wouldn't be surprised if there's this sort of Gulf of Tonkin incident that happens. Oh, can you still hear me, by the way?
I can still hear you.
Okay, my battery just died on my camera. Let me switch it up very quickly. 2 seconds
Okay,
once.
actually, yeah, that gives me a chance to quickly do something with my camera too here. So hold on, guys, for 1 second. All right.
Still switching 1 sec.
Okay, guys. Everybody's having camera trouble today. I'm going to see if I can get my camera working too.
So I bought a Linux Panasonic camera, and I'm using the Canon camera as a webcam. And
right.
Canon has this feature where you can download the software, software where you can use it as anywhere it's defined. But I can't do that with the Panasonic one. They have like double batteries that you can put in.
So what I have, can you still hear me while you're over there?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
So what I have actually is so I've got a Panasonic camera here, but it's micro four thirds, and the battery actually the battery compartment's open, and there's a battery that goes in, but it's not really a battery. It's an adapter, and a wire comes out, and it plugs into a USB. So it's unlimited power. It's just being fed directly from a USB. So it'll never run out.
Oh, that's something I need. Shoot, I actually had to switch the battery when I was talking to Carl because we talked for about 2 hours, and yeah, that was really frustrating. I really do need to find a way to not have the battery die. I'm actually speaking about the documentary, the poverty documentary that we're doing, or that CGTN did and PBS censored. I reached out to Xinjiang to see if she wanted to do a reaction with me on that. And we're still trying to coordinate if we can set that up. So that's that may be something to look forward to at the end of January. So keep an eye out for that, y'all. But I'm gonna have to figure out a way to have unlimited power funneling through the camera for that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a way to do it. You find those little adapters that come out with the wires. But yeah, what I wanted to do is I'll go on to another book that I'm reading. I'm actually listening to it in an audio book format, and then we'll go on to something that you're reading. So let me see here. It is Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, this is his second version. And it's really, really interesting to hear about how America kind of asserts its power around the world, and it's fascinating. It's also sad because the men, the people, the leaders with integrity, the real ones with integrity, who have these kind of economic hitmen that come in and make them offers and say, by the way, if isn't it sad what happened to whatever the other leader is who was just assassinated in another country, but also using bribes, also bribing them with lots of money and stuff like that. And the few who had the integrity to stand up against it, they just they lose them. These countries lose these great men that could have led their people into prosperity because they didn't buckle to the economic interests of America. Actually, I have a short clip here I'm going to play, and that is talking about getting rid of these guys who had integrity. And it was John Perkins. He was on an interview with David Patrick. That's it. I'm going to play that. I'm going to play that for you now.
And these presidents all know this. They know the history. They know they will be taken out of it. So what's the choice? Patrick, what would you do? It's usually a series of meetings, maybe some of them over lunch with a few cocktails, et cetera. And the president's maybe electing a little, and then you just sort of subtly start talking about, somehow you bring up the topic of what happened recently to Salvador Allende in Chile, or what happened to Arbenz in Guatemala. Depending on what part of the world you're in, you talk about these people and you say, isn't that a shame? And you talk a little bit about this. And depending on the president, different presidents, you approach differently. But they get it. I mean, they know the history. It doesn't, these guys know what's going on. But I will say, Patrick, and I talk in the book about two presidents who did not play the game. democratically elected president of Ecuador, Jaime Roldos, and the head of state of Panama, Omar Torrijos. They had tremendous integrity. They saw what I was trying to do, and they didn't do it. And they understood the dangers they were taking, and they talked about these things. And both of them were, I believe, assassinated. They were both taken out in almost a little over 2 months apart from each other in 1981. They were taken out in their private planes in Ecuador first, with Jaime Roldos. His private plane crashed, very suspicious circumstances. And less than 3 months later, same thing happened to Omar Torrijos.
Oh, where are you? There
There
you go. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I got it. That,
Yeah.
I mean, super it's frustrating.
It's frustrating. It's tragic. It's sad that they've gone and they've taken away these great men from these.
But here's the thing, and this is why I lean more Marxist Leninist in my politics, because when we look at how imperialism and colonialism and all this works, especially in Latin America, it's not surprising. It's not surprising how these economic hitmen are able to either influence or assert dominance against those that are in, democracies, vulnerable democracies. When we hear that story, when we hear these assassinations in Ecuador and Chile and everywhere else compared to Cuba, and how literally Fidel Castro survived 600 assassination attempts by the CIA, like a ridiculous amount. One of them was from an ex-lover, and that was a different story. But these attempts failed because he at least had the power of the state and the people backing him, and they were able to foil whatever attempts that were gained on his life. Obviously, the embargo happened against the people and everything. Yet, still, even with the embargo, having the infrastructure and the resources to still maintain very great healthcare, education, and facets and infrastructure for their people. I did a sort of a video reacting to some Cuban videos, and it was fascinating to see that, the woman that was narrating, she grew up in Cuba, and there's like, we're used to embargoes. I mean, embargoes don't hurt us anymore. We're just when Obama opened up in 2015, it was great, it was fantastic. But now that it's closed down, it's just back to normal. And how they try to play economics against the people. They are more vulnerable in these types of democracies. Now, it is shifting. I'll say this, because when we look at Bolivia and Venezuela, those parties were technically elected, but the parties that got into power, they're manifesting a lot more infrastructure and sort of insulation between the coup attempts from the outside and their own support within. And I'm actually, I'm very supportive of what they're doing in both those countries, obviously, especially in an anti-imperialist standpoint. But I'm kind of watching, saying, okay, I'm not going to be surprised if something happens, but I'm not hoping for that either. I'm not saying that they're doing the wrong thing or anything, because it's really great that we're seeing people finally take a stand against this. And I don't know how true the economic hitman story is now. I guess we're seeing it in some places still, in other Latin American places and whatnot. But I do think that it's an important lesson on how far the West or imperialists will go in order to influence countries.
Well, yeah. Well, there's still a wariness about this, and actually, I want to play another short clip for you. It's about a minute and 20 seconds.
Sure.
The David Patrick David I always mix up his name. The guy who was interviewing John Perkins in the last clip. He
Okay.
he's pretty anti-China, I'd say. You know, he tries
Hmm.
to he brings all of these kinds of people on that say some pretty ridiculous things about China, and he was trying to push John into saying that that's what China's doing now. And John, he's not necessarily pro-China or anti-China. He says I can't really say that, and he
Right.
tries to redeem it a little bit by talking about some of the construction projects in Latin America, saying, oh, there were some buildings they made that had terrible quality. They did the plumbing wrong or something superficial like that.
Really?
And
Okay.
but the thing is, what he came down to is he said that, but actually, you know, these countries feel way less threatened to do business with China than they do with the U.S. And I'll let you
Hmm.
listen to that now for the
Sure.
full context. Here we go.
Is China studied what US did, and now China's saying, we're going to take it to a whole different level. Do you think China's using any of that economic hitman business model?
You know, I hate to speculate on stuff I don't really know. I certainly would expect that China would be trying to do that because that is part of the model. What I do know is what China has been doing in Latin America, for example, where I still spend a lot of time. I spend in a normal year, I spend 2 to 3 months in Latin America, in Ecuador, Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and many places. And I've seen in the Bahamas, I've seen how China is making huge inroads into these countries. But what China has done differently than the United States, and I asked my friends in high places and in some of the Latin American countries, why are you taking loans from China? Don't you think that they're going to do the same thing that that's coming out? We'd much rather take loans from China than the United States. And I'd say, but wait, aren't they after your resources too? And they say, yeah, they're after our resources. We don't have the technology to mine, to drill for oil, to do these things. So we need outside country to help us. And we know that the United States has a record of overthrowing our governments and assassinating leaders. We all know that. And of building military bases on our soil, and of forcing us to vote against Cuba at the United Nations, doing things, exercising huge controls over us. And China hasn't done that. China's not built any military bases here. They've not taken out any of our presidents. They've not been involved in any coups. And so we'd prefer to take loans from them. So, and I'm not defending what China's doing by any means, because I think their motives are the same. But I will say that I think that they may have learned from our mistakes, from the US's mistakes in being quite so blatant as we've been in some of these places.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yep.
Can you, yeah.
And
Yeah,
that actually reminds me of I'm gonna actually let me see if you get this clip in the chat. 1 second.
where are you
This
sending it
is the StreamYard.
Okay.
This clip is from Akon. I don't know if you saw this interview from Vlad TV, but he basically reiterates the same thing. He's reiterating that, you know, China and their involvement is nothing like the United States whatsoever. And if it wasn't for China's involvement, Africa and all these other global South countries wouldn't be as developed as they are today. You know, and it's really powerful to say that, you know, they're not building military bases, they're not trying to influence votes or, you know, political power here. And if they disagree, they'll be like, fine, we'll move on, you know. And it's such a, you know, it's sort of, I even say it's a little nefarious to say that, oh, they're trying to do the same thing that the United States was doing, but, you know, they're doing it through loans and things like that. It's like, no, you're not, you're not getting it, you know.
Yeah, no. I mean, he clearly didn't really fully understand the China dynamic, and he was just trying to say something. Because he said later on, he says, you know, I'm American. I want to support America. I want America to win. And so, but he was at least honest with saying that maybe there's something nefarious going on. But if we want to stick to the facts here, these countries would rather deal with China than they would with the U.S. And that's
exactly.
That was at least a very honest answer, even though he tried to kind of cushion it a little bit, as you could probably say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm at a part in this book now where it moves on to Saudi Arabia. I just finished a chapter on Saudi Arabia, and now it's on to Iran. One thing that really struck me as interesting also was that when Saudi Arabia kind of embargoed oil against the U.S., when they kind of blocked it, the oil prices went up like crazy, and a lot of people in Saudi Arabia became very, very wealthy. And then their people started traveling around the world, started becoming a little bit more Western in the sense that, a little bit more materialistic and stuff like that. And they, America saw that as an opportunity to kind of, modernize, westernize, this Muslim country. And so what they did was they started, they finally, when they opened things back up, they said, you're going to get lots of support from us. We're going to come in. We're going to build your infrastructures. They build shopping malls and, all these kinds of things, make it basically a Western country. But the most interesting thing for me was they saw in advance that Muslim extremists, that the extreme, a minority they may be, the extreme elements of Islam will not like this. They will not like kind of American ideals being imported, materialism, all this kind of stuff. They don't want their women being liberalized and all this kind of stuff. And so America saw that problem in advance. And so what was their method? Was their method to create some sort of PR campaigns or educational programs to bring potentially a very small percentage of extremists into the 21st century, or whatever, their version of the 21st century. No, they said, this is going to be a problem. We're going to bring in security forces for you. We're going to arm you. We're going to give you bombs. We're going to give you weapons. And that's how they dealt with it. And I think in Xinjiang, you get a lot of extremists being provoked from outside forces as well. But a lot of it has to do with the groups of people who have a more extreme interpretation of Islam. And China's not. Thank goodness, China's not taking the West's approach. It may not be the perfect approach. It may not be, I don't know what the perfect approach is. I don't know what the perfect solution is. But people aren't being killed here. They were identifying people who were at risk, or kind of wanting to make sure that their women stay in their place and all this kind of stuff. And they were creating educational programs for them. Do I think that potentially some of these people were put into, some people who didn't deserve to go into these vocational training centers went into them? Probably. So what happened? What ended up happening was that you had a system that China took that basically came with the risk of some people being educated that shouldn't have been educated. The West version, when they go into these countries that don't even belong to them and bomb people, their method comes with innocent people not being educated, innocent people being bombed and killed, or as we saw with the Australian Special Forces, having their children's throats slit. I think it was really interesting to kind of see the dynamic of how America deals with a problem like this, even before it comes up.
I mean, but we all even seen what happened in France when, the quote unquote terrorist attack happened with the and how they basically tried to do the exact same or worse with the Muslim population in France, and compared that to China and what they were trying to do, vocational educational camps. I think I tweeted out a article on how France did it and how it was being framed and lauded, praised, and whatnot. Like, they're going to try to do educational camps for more vulnerable and extreme sects of the population, whereas China was concentration camp narratives, and Holocaust and all this other stuff. And what France was doing, I think, was worse. They were tracking kids. They were tracking the most vulnerable just for their security and whatnot. It wasn't. It's obviously two-sided when and looking at how. When you were talking about Saudi Arabia in the Economic Hitman book, looking how the solution is through more repression, more violence. More repression, more violence, and how the United States didn't really find peaceful solutions or implement peaceful solutions first before they started their violent solutions.
And the long-term effects are more and more terrorists. They become more and more radicalized because this is the approach you're taking. So China's approach relies on, villainizing China's approach relies on a couple of things. First of all, ignoring the absolute hypocrisy of what the West has done to deal with extremists. and then basically turning what's going on in China into something that it's not. It's not millions of people. It's not concentration camps. It's not cultural genocide. On the contrary, you can see plenty. It's they don't want China to succeed in this realm. And the recent delisting of ETIM as a terrorist organization, you can be damn sure. You can be damn sure they are going to be used as a tool. They are going to absolutely be used as a tool from the U.S. If they can create a resurgence of terrorism in Xinjiang.
And it's funny that you actually mention, the efforts to kind of liberalize more radical notions, because I think the embassy, the U.S. Chinese embassy, tweeted out a article saying that thanks to Chinese efforts, women in Xinjiang have more freedom to, have more access to women programs, health programs, birth control, and everything like that.
Their wording was terrible.
That's the thing. It's like, I know how this is going to be twisted in the West. It's like, wow, you're justifying sterilization. You're justifying blah, blah, blah.
That's not what's happening, but they got to take a step back. Like the media here is terrible, and it's no match. It's no match for Western media, especially when they really want to sell you a story. And I think there's a lot of things that people can reflect on that as well. When they determined that Donald Trump was a threat to American safety and stability, they censored him. Now, you imagine being a country which is constantly under attack by Western media and CIA-sponsored, the USAGM with Radio Free Asia and all these kind of programs, which are designed to disrupt societies. And then they wonder why do these countries have censorship? Well, it's because they're under a absolute constant attack. I talk about this before too. My mother's country as well. They did the same thing when Chetty Jagan was elected, democratically elected. He was a little bit too friendly with the Soviet Union, and so they went in and they created media campaigns to basically create racial violence against the two main ethnic groups in my mother's country. Had they had a censorship system to block that stuff, potentially Guyana would be far more prosperous than it is today, because it's not very prosperous now.
And that's such a important point. Again, us on the left, we really do realize how the right takes advantage of this freedom of speech and doesn't like censorship, but they have the millions of dollars in wealth to actually influence people towards the wrong things, and it becomes a very dangerous sabotage for people that are trying to help the people. And these voices, these very powerful voices with money backing them and everything, becoming very attractive to the people, saying, hey, you're not helping me by giving money to the poor. You're raising my taxes potentially when I become a billionaire. It's just really the type of freedom complex that people have when it comes to freedom. I'm going to mention Slavoj Žižek again. He talks about 3 types of freedom. He talks about a non-freedom, which basically, a type of freedom that we don't have, that it's kind of limited, but it's good, sort of like yelling fire in a crowded theater and things like that. I would say a bird cage freedom. You don't really know. You think you have the freedom, but you don't really have it. It's kind of systematically put in your brain that you think you have it. And a horrible freedom, a non-freedom. Basically, he said that even though he's left, he was talking to some nationalists back in Yugoslavia during the war, ethnic cleansers, literal ethnic cleansers, and they basically told him, I don't like your Western liberalism because you overregulate people. I want to smoke, I want to kill, I want to do whatever I want, and give me this horrible freedom. And obviously that freedom is not wanted. That's too much. But I think a lot of Americans have this brainwashed freedom, this notion that, as long as I have my freedom of speech, I'm okay, and I choose my own destiny. When in reality, it's designed a particular way. The majority of people here are designed to, go to school, become obedient workers, have a family, grow up, and retire and die. That's the routine of our people, and that's what people need to be content with. And they say that's freedom. They say that's our freedom, but in reality, it's controlled. It's been, very what do you call it? When the marbler is chipping away, it's been very crafted to fit this notion that you're free when really you're not. I buy a product, whether it's a bag of potato chips, but marketing people have developed several that have put in millions of dollars to make sure my choice is that bag of potato chips. It's the exact same thing with these American freedoms. We think we have it, but we really don't. And when we actually try to portray something that is dangerous to the establishment, whether it's Trump or whether it's the left, there's going to be a lot of repression, and there's going to be a lot of, whether it's the corporations or an economic hitman, there's going to be a lot of no freedom of speech for you. So
yeah, I mean, it is remarkable when you talk about it in that way, where the people, the American people, are willing to support a system that basically oppresses them and does nothing for them. They're so, I mean, that's a level of brainwashing that's really remarkable. That people, even in the bottom 50%, are sure that their system and their way of doing things is right for them.
Right.
Right. And it takes a lot of manipulation. Although the USAGM I was talking about, they have a mandate where they're not allowed to really openly broadcast or promote it in America because it might be dangerous to their, democracy. They're not allowed to manipulate their own people. But there are, which is really telling, where you want other countries to accept this in without censorship, but how dangerous this psychological warfare that you're doing is. So you don't want to advertise it in your own country. But the fact is, it does happen. It was a podcast I was listening to where they were talking about back when the American government was trying to overthrow the Sandinista government in Guatemala. And they,
I think it was Nicaragua. The Sandinistas in Nicaragua.
Sorry.
Yeah.
In Nicaragua. There was a guy that because they wanted to craft the narrative, and they created this system. Well, first of all, there was a guy named Walter Raymond Jr., and he was basically from the CIA's propaganda and psychological warfare department. But you can't use CIA psychological warfare on your own people. You're not allowed to, and that's one of the rules. So he resigned and then joined a private organization to do it. And they put all these kinds of systems in place to basically any journalist that wrote anything positive about the Sandinista government would be accused of being provided Sandinista prostitutes. If they were a gay journalist, they were accused of being given gay Sandinista provided prostitutes. And they created just this. They got everybody in line, and I don't think they need to go that far anymore. People fall in line so much more easy. They rely on the public to villainize people. If you look at LeBron James, when he just said something simple like, I don't think we have all the facts we need on Hong Kong, he was absolutely blasted. I had one commenter on my last video, which was kind of sad. They said to me, you know what, thank you, as a fellow Canadian. They were Chinese Canadian. He says, I live in this country and I'm afraid to say that I love China. This is something that they can't say. They would never post this on their Facebook because they're afraid of how they would be villainized. It's just people are really just molded into line so well now.
And it's very interesting that you say that too. I actually had a very sad story. So in my office, it hits me personally. In my office, I put up my country's flag. I have my pride and everything in my office hanging loud and proud. We have a new associate that came in and is like, I would love to put up my Chinese flag. I would love to put up the Chinese flag, but obviously that's that may become political. And I'm like, no, do it. You should. That's where you're from. You should be proud. Don't be scared. Don't be scared or afraid. And if anybody tries to call you out on it, it's where you're from. I think I didn't want to reveal too much to her, but I was just like, you have your country has a very rich history that you should be proud of, and and if you're proud of that, and if you're proud of your identity, you're not going to be in trouble for that, and if anybody gives you, I was going to say, if anybody gives you hell, let me know, and I'll try to see what I can do, because that's bullshit, that's
Yeah, it
something
is.
that,
It's a genuine thing, a genuine fear
yeah,
that people have, though, and it is just, yeah, it's really sad.
right,
The
right,
psychological warfare is alive and well in the U.S., and that's why it's so easy to sell these ridiculous stories about cultural genocide and all these things that are going on in this scary,
mm-hmm,
country that just keeps growing, and will outpace them soon. But
yep.
I think. Sorry, I said I know mentioned one of your books, but it ties too well into a documentary I
Yeah, let's
watched.
see it.
I don't have a video clip of it, but I got the image of this. It's called "The Power of Nightmares." I've been addicted to some of
Interesting.
Adam Curtis's stuff, and they
Uh-huh.
talk about this idea where Western politicians um, they no longer deliver dreams from people to people. They protect them from nightmares. This is their job now, and they
Huh.
and part of that requires them continually manufacturing nightmares to protect the public against. Um,
Huh.
and there was I think this is the biggest fear of the West, is that they have to look inward and fix their own problems. This is the best
Yep.
way to hold on to power. And right now, is China is the enemy that they want to pretend they have to protect people from. Um,
Yes.
but
I
yeah,
actually, and sorry to interrupt. Do you have a clip or anything that you want to show about the documentary, or?
I don't have a video. I don't have a video clip of that. I tried to look for it. The trailers aren't that they're too long to play here. But people can look
Okay.
that up. Yeah, the Power of Nightmares.
Power of
And
Nightmares.
then
Okay.
he has another one that's really good too, called the Century of Self,
Okay.
which is let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, Century of Self is also another one of his documentaries. Really good at it. Examines how people are manipulated, and how the public is treated. Highly recommended. But yeah,
So I have two documentaries related to that, actually. I There was one documentary that was really on point about the fall of the leftist movement in the 1960s, and they used New York as a example of how it became this hyper something. I don't know if the chat knows it or something. It's where,
hyper normalization.
yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
I only seen a bit about that, but I really loved how they placed the narrative about how in the 70s they basically gave up the community, the governance of the community, to a bunch of bankers because they needed the loans, and how depressingly sad you started to see cuts made to the teachers unions and everything else like that, and how the left was just so tired from the 1960s that they didn't have enough energy to continue in the 1970s. I don't think it's like that. I think there was also a little bit more of an undercutting of the left from the government as well. And it just really depleted the resources from organizations to continue fighting. But at the same time, really interesting how we became hyper normalized, and this is just the way that is. This is just how we govern now. And really does
It might have,
echo.
yeah. It might have been an Adam Curtis documentary, because he goes into this in a lot of detail. I believe it was in the Century of Self one. This
Huh,
idea of hyper normalization. Yeah. Um,
interesting.
Really fascinating stuff. So what else is on? Let's go to something you are. I'm kind of hogging this with all the stuff that I'm looking at. What's something you're reading?
Well, like I was saying, I'm reading like a law student, to be honest. I along with the Giannis book that I'm reading, that book was actually given by me to my father. My father recommended it because he wanted me to take a look at what he had to say, and I see Giannis's viewpoints in some areas. I disagree with other areas. So it'll be interesting to read his book. This one's called Talking to My Daughter About the Economy, or How Capitalism Works and How It Fails. He really liked the ending in this one. So that is interesting. I also got this book, the little book about Deng Xiaoping and just build socialism and Chinese characteristics. I think it's his speech itself, and the person that sent it said that this is definitely a very rare book that Deng Xiaoping was written, but I think it's available online for free, and so I just kind of wanted to have it. The book that I'm basing the Deng Xiaoping video on that I'm going to publish next week is from Weiwei Zhang and the ideology and economic reform under Deng Xiaoping. Have to say that it's really does break down the struggles, the ideological and political struggles that Deng Xiaoping had to deal with when enacting his reforms. Really did paint a great picture on how he crafted everything and how he became a fantastic statesman in trying to pursue all this, trying to balance between so there's three factions factions of ideology within the CPC. It was the cultural revolutionary left, which were the ultra leftists, according to him, and the reformers. But the reformers were split into two camps as well. There were the actual reformers and conservative reformers. Conservative reformers basically meaning that they were still kind of obedient to Marxist orthodoxies and whatnot, and really they wanted reform, but not too much reforms. And then you had the other influences, the Western left, or the Western liberalism that was kind of inflicting the students in the markets and everything that led to protests, that led to all this other things that threatened China's or the CPC's sort of stability and power, and how Deng Xiaoping really navigated through all that. I would have to say the last 30 pages of his book really tied everything together well. It was really fascinating to see how a couple of the pages were really a slog to get through, but ultimately he tied them really well, and I highly recommend reading that. The next one, though, I know it's something that you read, though, is the Red Star over China. By Edgar
Actually,
Snow.
I haven't got to it yet. I haven't
Oh, no
managed to
kidding.
get to it. Yeah. The I got an image here ready for it. And
There you
let me
go.
see here. Yeah, Red Star over China. Yep.
And
So you've read it. What did you think?
oh no, I still have to read it. I still have to read it.
Okay.
I was gonna say I was trying to get to it because I actually my friend in Kansas City, because I learned that Edgar Snow comes from Kansas City, and the I believe there's a YouTube video from the Kansas City Public Library that has a reenactor playing Edgar Snow and talking about his trip to China.
I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. I really liked how he told that story. But I really do want to get into this book sometime this year. So hopefully that will take place. But I was going to say, who recommended that book to you?
It was somebody. Oh shoot, I can't remember. I had a couple of people actually. One was a friend on WeChat who sent it over. Actually,
Nice.
they didn't originally recommend it. I think they just without any context just showed me a picture of it, and I hadn't seen the cover where it has Edgar Snow's signature on it. I said, "Is that really signed?"
Oh wow.
Let me see this.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he said, "No, it's not really signed." And then I started looking into it. I said, "Oh, this is something I really want to read." When Western media was ignoring the movement that was going on, the grassroots movement of the Chinese Communist Party and what Mao was doing, he was one of the few people who went right into the trenches with them and kind of
Right.
reported on what he saw.
Right.
So
And
definitely
really
looking forward to that.
fascinating story with that, man. I was
Yeah.
when you told me about that, I was like, he was basically the only American journalist covering it and have a first person view. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. For Chinese history, also one of my favorite. This was a audio series. There was also a video series, and they removed it off of YouTube. I can't believe it.
Oh,
But this was this one, the From Yao to Mao: 5,000 Years of Chinese History.
was that the
Um,
one you reviewed on your video?
yes, I did I focused on the specific parts of it about the Chinese Communist Party, which is the biggest
Okay.
curiosity or thing. So, but that was taken from his talks. And this guy, what's his name here? The name is too small here, but he is a part of the Confucius Institute in the U.S. And the Confucius Institute is seeing themselves under a lot of fire, also being, spreading Chinese ideologies, scary. And
Ugh,
I think some of them are being shut down or something like that, or definitely
wow.
being censored, as we know with his Chinese history series, which was completely taken off of YouTube, and that's
And that's
also
another thing that
interesting
I
considering. Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to
Only
kind of talk about with. Oh, uh-huh.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. There's a little bit of a delay between us too, so you go ahead first.
Okay. I That's another thing that I really wanted to pick your brain about with what happened with the London Times and that expose and YouTube starting to censor us more and more. What do you think would be our next move to try to continue our voices to be heard? I mean, I would really, I would really love it if we do have some sort of channel, um, just in case any of this sort of collapses. Any if one of us gets censored or one of us gets shut down, like I wouldn't be surprised if. Uh, YouTube starts to strike down Barrett's videos or anything like that because of the London Times and everything. Like, what do you think our strategy should be if that happens?
Well, I just think there's too much power in the hands of these companies right now that if they want to silence this stuff, I think it's going to be pretty hard to have much of an audience after they do that, at least for the time being. I think eventually there's probably going to be some sort of infrastructure that will replace if they go too crazy on this. I think there's going to be other infrastructures to replace uh, what they are. To kind of get around what these guys are doing. In China, of course, there's censorship and stuff like that, but people know how to use a VPN. There's a lot of people
Right.
using VPNs here. They can get around with it's almost like a minimum kind of proficiency test. If you can use a VPN, maybe you're gonna be all right, and you're not gonna be fooled by this Falun Gong crap and this USAGM stuff. But in the West, the companies have far more power. There isn't an alternative once Twitter
Yeah.
and YouTube starts doing this stuff for now. I think
Yeah.
Jack, the founder, CEO, whatever it is of um, of Twitter, he came out with this statement trying to convince everybody that it was, this is not really a coordinated effort with Facebook and everybody to ban Donald Trump and stuff like that. And he said he went into talking about Bitcoin too. He says one of the things he likes about Bitcoin is that it is decentralized. It's disconnected from the governments. It runs on its own and stuff like that. And I think that's what he's trying to say is that in the future there will be these kinds of decentralized, uncensorable networks that will come up. But for the time being, I don't think that's going to happen in the West. I think the West is going to be able to very creatively silence voices and opinions that they don't want to hear while still maintaining the illusion of free speech, while still convincing everybody that,
Right.
yeah. And before we go on, there's somebody who did a super chat. Ben Hall, thank you for that. He's asking if we saw any of the programs by Zhang Weiwei. So I think this is a very good tie into the books that you're going to be reading. I believe these are Zhang Weiwei, right? Yeah.
Yes,
There we
they
go.
are.
Those are books that you're going to be reading soon. I've been trying to find a copy as well, and I've seen a lot of his talks. His talks are very, very good.
Oh yeah, I highly recommend listening to uh Weiwei Zhang. He's so, especially at these round tables. I remember both him and Eric Lai are the only voices for China, and he's surrounded by Western uh liberal quote unquote intellectuals that try to really tell them, hey, at least we have freedom here. And he's just like
Yeah.
kind of nodding,
What?
okay.
Yeah. What is
Yeah,
freedom? What is important to you?
seriously.
No.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I really can't emphasize, if you really want to see him at his best, just check out those videos. I mean, and also how he talks. He I remember there was one video where he literally says, if the United States does not change their ways under President Bush, they're going to get somebody so much worse. And there you go. He's so on point, and really somebody that I think he's a professor at Fudan University, in Shanghai. Um,
Yeah.
And those two books in particular, one of them talks about how when we look at democracy and if democracy is right for China, um, why it's not, and how they not. I think he goes into the history and how it was tried and how it failed. He did go into a little bit on that in this book that I read on how they tried to implement democracy and republicanism as either the second or third attempt at modernization, and it failed because there were too much corruption and military intervention to make it work. And China has always been through these phases of modernization, and only through Deng Xiaoping have they finally caught up, unified as a unified country to modernize. And I really think that through that argument, it speaks for itself. How it wasn't through Western liberal democracy how China became what it is today. It was through socialism with Chinese characteristics, and how really important it was to emphasize how China needed to blaze its own path and things like that. I would also say that, and obviously we are starting to see the cracks of Western democracy and how it's more of a facade and things like that, because the elites, it's more ran by the elites, and it's an oligarchy rather than a true democracy.
Right.
I think a poll, there was a poll saying that, I forget what the poll was for China, but China definitely has a higher score where people believe that they live in a democracy than the United States,
Right. Right.
And it's with that, Weiwei Zhang is really showing how those types of contradictions, and really exposing those contradictions to these, I would say, idealistic intellectuals that still think the West is the way to go.
Right. Yeah. No, it's something that I really want to get into a little bit more too, because although the America's system is definitely not right for China, and
Right.
China's system, isn't something you could copy and paste for America either. But
Sure.
China isn't trying to export their system to the U.S. The U.S. is
Exactly.
trying to export their system to
Yeah.
everyone else. But what are the exact answers for democracy in the West? I don't know, and that's something I want to explore. And that's this is on your to-read list:
Huh.
Democracy for Realists. Why elections do not produce responsive governments. And actually,
Interesting.
that was let me see. There was a guy on Twitter named Taro Taylor. That's his code name, which is he's actually he's a lawyer in
Oh,
Hong Kong,
nice.
and he wants to stay anonymous also. And it was him who posted something saying that he read this on his own Twitter, and then I asked him about it. Let me see
Interesting.
if he's. Yeah, I'm trying to see what he wrote about it. I'm looking for it here. Oh
Sure.
yeah,
I
so
mean,
he says his tweet was just finished. Excellent read for those interested in politics. Completely exposes the fallacy of democracy. It proves that people make decisions on the bias of social identities and partisan loyalties, and not an honest examination of reality.
yep.
So when he described it like that, I was like, okay, this is definitely something I want to read, because I don't know what the exact solution is. And then the follow up after that will be this one, which talks about the China model, to
Hmm.
go into a little bit more detail about, from at least from this author's perspective, what the China model is,
Interesting.
and yeah, and explore some of these ideas a little bit more.
I mean, it's
Um,
it's really fascinating because as we're seeing the decay in Western democracy, I think that is still a it's going to be a shock for a majority of people, because there's still a majority of people in the West that has faith in it. And there is just no other way to do it. I mean, even when you see AOC and the most progressive people here, they're not trying to change our voting systems or anything, maybe get rid of the electoral college, but you rarely see anybody say, hey, maybe we need to get rid of the Constitution. Maybe we need to do a lot more things away from the Constitution that was, United States has the oldest Constitution in the world, and it's just hasn't changed whatsoever. The last amendment was decades ago, and it's just completely obvious how the nobody is ready to challenge the system in a way that is going to be truly revolutionary in the West. I mean, you have the European parliamentary systems, and I think a lot of leftists, American leftists, want European parliamentary systems, multi-party systems. But when you look at those systems in Europe, they're still struggling too. They're still not representing the people. And even when you have public finance limitations, and your elections can only go for this long and this long and this like that, like those rules don't stop the sort of garbage in, garbage out system that continues to the elites continue to dominate through. And in order to truly have a better system, I like I said, I think it's, you have to push yourself more left to actually see what can actually be representative for the people. And it's not going to be through reforming electoral systems, especially Western electoral systems that are formatted to benefit not only a specific class type, but a specific specific race, religion, and all this other stuff. Even in the what area of the country you are, there is just so many facets that we have to completely overturn in order to truly be representative. So I don't know. I mean, that's why I really jumped into China in the first place and had studied how they implemented their systems. I did a video about how China's government worked, and it was really hard for me to actually understand what provinces were and how it was just one unit of the national system and how everything flows down from there. Whereas we have like a Venn diagram in the States where you have the state and the federal government, and they have some shared powers, but they're kind of have their own entities at the same time. So learning about how China is really unified in their systems and try to flow from there, it's fascinating. And I really, after learning how their system works, I think we can learn a lot from and still have the democracy that people demand, but change in a fundamental way so that the people actually have power.
Yeah, I mean, the key too is that China has been learning from other systems all along, and it's
Mm.
not a matter of copy paste. It's a matter of taking the elements they think that are good, looking at what doesn't work in other societies, and if America could do the same thing, imagine what they could accomplish. I'm gonna let you. I just need 1 minute. Yeah, I'm gonna let you keep talking, and you can maybe
Sure,
interact with some of the comments, but just give me 1 minute.
sure,
Yeah.
no worries. All right, so we're reaching 2 hours now, 2 hours exactly. And let me see. Yes, I seen a comment back there that chisel was the right word that I was looking for. But democracy means people do what's popular, not necessarily what's right, and that's true. And one of the things that really should be emphasized is that minority rights and majority rule isn't it's sometimes not upheld in the United States. Like uh, there was, as a lawyer, we study all these cases in the judicial system, and there's a great book. I forget the author's name, but he wrote about all the embarrassing, messed up decisions the Supreme Court made, justifying the Japanese or the Chinese Exclusion Act, or justifying separate but equal, the immigration of Latin Americans and things like that. Like all these horrible decisions from the Supreme Court that were basically just legally justified and legally okay to do. And it was very frustrating that something like that can happen. But at the same time, for example, when California passed Prop 8, which banned same-sex marriage, but the Supreme Court overturned it, that was one of the very few rare instances where minority rights trumped the majority powers and majority voters. And in a perfect system, I wish that would happen a lot more. You would never have the revocation of the Voting Rights Act from the Supreme Court, or the allowance of dark money and things like that. But of course, in a capitalist system, you do. And that's really frustrating to see how that all gets trickled down from the elites from there. So yeah, that's my sort of rant on majority rules but minority rights.
Yeah. Note to self: whenever I'm going to do a live stream with you again, do not have such a big cup of tea, because I should have known I would have gone on this long. But I'm good now. I'm good.
Okay. I was gonna say too. I was gonna do a quick fix up with my mask over here. So let me. I'll be right back fixing that up.
Cool. Sounds good. Sounds good. I'll look at some of the comments here too. Yeah. Adrian Zenz, I see his name coming up. That's the real interesting one that's creating a lot of this propaganda we're talking about. I'm going to go, we're going to continue. I've got a few more books that I'm going to recommend that I'm reading recently. Once Bay comes back, and a couple of them are non-political, which are just fun things, because I think it's a lot of I think a lot of my subscribers also are into a lot of political stuff, but once in a while it's nice to consume something a little bit more light and fun. I see the comment, adult diapers. No, I'm not going to go there. I'm still going to enjoy my big cup of tea, but I think we held it down. Hopefully Bay was entertaining enough during that time. I had a live stream once with a guy from also from California, and when I had to take a quick break, he brought out some nunchucks. Jerry is his name, and he brought out these nunchucks and started playing with the nunchucks. And I think if Bay did that, it would go so well with his mask. That would have been a really good. Situation. I'm still getting some comments that my mic isn't loud enough. I'm gonna try to. You're hearing me fine though over there, yeah, Bay?
Oh yeah, you're good.
Okay, so let me try to boost this up a bit. I've already boosted it up in the software as loud as I can. All right, so let's continue on. So you have actually, you know what? I think I've got to. I'm gonna quickly do some other recommendations, and I think some guys here already know that I have read these, because one of these is the Management of Savagery, because I did interview Max Blumenthal afterwards about this book. It's really good book to better understand the American foreign policy system. Has China Won was another one with Kishore Mahbubani. Highly recommended. I love this book. A really honest look at the what China's doing right, what China's doing wrong, what America's doing right, what America's doing wrong, and how each other could learn from each other. And just a really good look. It takes a really good step back and looks at everything. I, of course, interviewed Kishore Mahbubani on my channel as well. So many of you know that I already did interview him. And then
Nice.
let's see what else I've got on my list. We have, so yeah, the China model. This one, I'm not sure what to expect with this, but I've been really interested in reading about propaganda. So the misinformation age. I think I saw this on my Audible recommended lists. When I'm driving, usually I'll listen to some audiobooks. So this is one that I'm going to be listening to, which I'm looking forward to. And before I continue on with some of my other ones, let's go. You've got one here. I've loaded an image for The Edge of Chaos, right?
Yeah, that's Dambizi Moyo, the liberal.
Oh, it's Dambizi. Okay, yeah, she's good. She did a really good TED talk on
Yes, she did.
the idea of democracy and everything like that. And is this a new book?
No, I think it was back in 2012 12 or 14. It was, I think that's her most recent book though. And I seen a video of her talking about how how Western democracy is failing and how China's style of governance is rising and how it's becoming a successful model for others in the global South. But she also, the moral of the story though is just like how there needs to be more cooperation for the West to come back. And like I said, her knowledge is invaluable for understanding Africa and the economics over there. But there is a sort of liberal tint with her message as well. Because she's just trying to say, we got to fix things, everybody. If we just, cooperate, and it's like, no, they're not going to cooperate though. So, the message kind of falls flat, but the context of the book does reveal a lot of how the Western democracies are failing. So I really want to dive into that book a little bit more.
Yeah, that's something I'm probably going to add to my list also. I mean, her talk was amazing. She did a pretty good job of illustrating the limitations of those systems, and that's exactly in line with what some of the stuff is that I'm reading here. Also, another big one was that I read, and I posted. You probably saw the thread. This one here. Let's see. I posted a thread on this book, Battleground Tibet.
Yes.
That was really interesting. It really cut through a lot of the Tibet kind of propaganda from outside,
Nice.
and how the Tibetan and exile community was weaponized by the CIA and all this kind of stuff. It's a really relevant read today also, because you can see how a lot of the propaganda is being recycled for Xinjiang. A lot of the same stuff. A lot of the propaganda that was abandoned and that is too hard to still back up today, because it's like, what are you talking about? Now we can look at how much the populations have increased, everything like that. Now, it does look like Tibet is being re-weaponized again. I saw that Adrian Zentz did an article on Tibet. So I think my theory is that he's smelt a new NED money trail, which he's going to go after. Because they're really trying to get China from every single angle right now.
Not surprising, Tibet has always been kind of a honeypot for that, as also sometimes even captivates Western leftists, like Free Tibet and everything like that. At least the older leftists, and but you honestly, I think we touched upon this before as well, how this is a small balkanization strategy that the United States is campaigning for. Tibet, Xinjiang, Inner Mongolia, and Hong Kong, just all around China, just trying to break it up, when in reality, it's again a misinformation and misunderstanding of what's happening. But it does go back to, the forces that are trying to pursue that negative narrative are just trying to enrich themselves, when on the ground it's not even happening. It's not even the truth, and that's, I was almost if I ever get the chance to go to China, and I really want to at least spend a month there, I do want to spend 1 week in Xinjiang and take that BuzzFeed article where they have the coordinates to the to these sorts of concentration camps, and actually show this is actually a 5-star apartment. I am literally here right now.
There's been people who have already done that, and just kind of laughing at some of these things that they're putting together. But the Tibet book, though, I don't know if you saw. I don't know how easy it was to see from the outside. When I started focusing on Tibet after my Tibet trip, and then posting some Tibet stuff, man, the amount of trolls that came through, it was unbelievable. And apparently there's like some troll farms that are actually, they're automated systems which post all kinds of stuff
I think
on your
you
feeds.
exposed some of them.
Yep. Yeah. And then there were some real people. There were some real people who were really,
Sure.
really upset that I was
Sure.
showing anything but miserable, suffering people in Tibet. It
Right.
was a shock to their entire identity. I have a very, very close friend of mine who is a Tibetan ethnicity. He was born into the exile community, but in Europe.
Mm,
And he gave me a lot of interesting perspectives on how these people are brought up from a young age. They don't know anything about China, but they're bred to hate China.
Right.
There are some stories that get propagated because a lot of the Tibetans in exile in India, when they want to immigrate to Europe, they will come up with stories about how they were persecuted by Chinese police. And these are people who were born in India and have never, ever
Wow.
stepped foot into China. But they're creating this story so that they can get citizenship to these EU countries. And he's saying that a lot of these EU countries, they know that it's BS. They're like, this person has never been to China. And they come up with these ridiculous stories of their mothers being raped by Chinese soldiers and all the most crazy things you could think of. But the European countries, they know, they bring them in, they meet their quotas in terms of how many, asylum seekers or whatever it is that they're supposed to accept. And they know that generally speaking, the Tibetan community from India doesn't cause any problems in Europe. So they're happy
Right.
with it too. They hit their
Right.
numbers, and it creates this system that
I was going to say, by the way, speaking about that, didn't what was it? The Boris Johnson, the UK, or somebody from the UK saying, "Okay, we're not actually doing the offering citizenship to Hong Kongers or anything like that. We're
oh
not
yeah,
actually
yeah,
not
yeah.
doing it." Or was
Well,
it
you know
Ted
what?
Cruz? And Ted Cruz cut off funding or
Everywhere.
something. Yeah,
Everywhere.
yeah.
Taiwan never really followed through in the way that they said they would. The UK never really
Mhm.
followed through. America never really followed through. I think deep down inside, they know how violent the Hong Kong protesters were. And do you
Right.
really want to bring that into your society? With the
Come
Tibetans
on,
that I'm
the
talking about in
hypocrisy.
India, yeah, the
Yeah.
Tibetans in India, they're generally speaking, they're more peaceful. They
Mm.
are very fanatical in terms of their beliefs, and they're, unfortunately, some of the, a lot of the self-immolations, because that's what people focused on. A lot of them
Mm.
happen in India. Like there were
Mm.
16-year-old kids in the Tibetan community there that lit themselves on fire from all the propaganda. They've never stepped foot into China. They don't know anything about it, and they took their own life. And I saw some really scary stuff where there were some these Tibetans in India were coming after me and Samira Khan, another person on Twitter, where they were putting kids in front of the camera saying that we are willing to sacrifice our life for the Dalai Lama. And actually, you know what? I have a clip. I have a clip here. I wasn't planning on playing it for this, but I have it in my StreamYard from preparing for another talk. I'm gonna let you listen to that kid that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
And
let's
I want you
see it.
I want you to imagine for a second. So first of all, I want you to imagine two things. I want you to imagine the 16-year-old kid who lit himself on fire in India to protest Tibet issues when he's never been into China. He's just believed everything that his community has told him. Imagine what that kid probably looked like when he was younger, like maybe, I don't know how old this kid is, 7 years old, 8 years old. Probably looked like this. Then the other thing I want you to imagine before I play this clip is I want you to imagine what would the reaction be if this kid was a Muslim kid saying exactly the same stuff he was saying right now about I'm willing to give my life for Allah and all of this stuff, and you better, watch out. What would happen if it was a Muslim kid in Europe saying the same thing? I'm going to play that clip for you now.
Sure.
Human beings like us, Tibetans, kids like me, 10-year-olds, we are all scarred because of you. You have not just hurt one person. You have scarred more than 535 million people. Even I, a 10-year-old, can risk my life. Even my life is on the line. I can do anything for His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama. But if this happens next time, if this happens again, next time it won't look pretty. You have to remember, all of us can do anything we want, so you better watch out.
Wow.
Wow.
Ugh,
Wow.
disturbing.
That is
very disturbing.
that is child abuse. That is absolutely child
Yeah.
abuse to brainwash a kid like that, to put him in front of a camera like that for your propaganda. You know, and there was a guy from Washington D.C. who so he's a Tibetan living in Washington D.C. So you can imagine who he's probably connected to and what he's doing.
Yeah.
He was following my Tibet trip when I was going to Tibet, and he was constantly like trying to undermine everything I was doing. And he said to me, one thing he said to me, he says, what do you think about the Chinese government restricting children from being able to go and be raised by the monasteries? And I said, well, you know what? I said, I don't think that's true because, you know, I met one of the kids who was in line to be selected as the Panchen Lama, according to the process in China through the Golden Urn. That's a whole separate thing. I could do a separate topic.
Uh-huh.
But anyways, he was in the monastery from a kid, like from when he was 5 years old, he entered the monastery and stuff like that. And I said, so I think this is happening. And he said, okay, but the rule actually on paper is that you're not allowed to stick your kid into a temple and let him be raised there. He said, what do you think of that? And I said, well, you know what? I said, if that's true, if that is the rule on paper is that you can't just stick your kid into a religious building and let them raise them. And but they have an exception basis where they say, okay, this child, whatever, you know, they have a review process where they say, okay, this child can go in, and they do it on an exception basis. I said, I absolutely fully support it. And then I shared this video to him. I said, because this kind of stuff happens. And I said, do you support this? I say, do you support a child like this being raised to speak like this and to be, you know, ruled by, you know, a religious extremism like this? And
what was their
response?
response?
No response. No response. Everything else, he was always replying. And I added, after a month, I sent him and said, hey, you know, I'd really like an answer to this. No.
Yeah. Nothing.
No. Nothing.
I mean, and it's true about that. You know, here, and I'll say this: here in the United States, we have a lot of religious freedoms, and one of the religious freedoms we have is homeschooling, where people usually, and this usually affects religious Christian folks that want to raise their kids in their own way, in their own teachings and whatnot. But there are still, even here, there are still regulations that homeschooling programs have to meet in order to actually enact their curriculum. You know, it's not a sort of free for all. Hey, I'm taking my kid out of school because I'm going to homeschool in my way, and under my religion, you can't do anything about that. It's like, no, there has to be a certain standard. Each state is different, but each state has a standard that has to be met for parents to homeschool them. You know, and I can only imagine. Let's say the Catholic Church or some sort of Christian church says, hey, if you drop off your 5 or 6 year old and you know, we can raise them here and give them a good education, you know, that's worrisome as well, you know. And you, I was going to say, you have to be careful with those sorts of mentalities as well. And then not only with the kids, it always kind of reminds me of cults that really have taken place in the 70s and 80s. You know, Mike Jones here in San Francisco had a huge following,
Jim
men,
Jones.
women, and children. Yeah.
Jim Jones, the one that went down to
Jim
Guyana,
Jones, excuse me. Jim Jones. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That was that they went down. That's my mother's country, Guyana. Yeah, they took them all down to Guyana, and then they all committed suicide. Like, at what point do you say that no, religion, just like Zhang Weiwei is talking about freedom from the tyranny of religion, also.
Right.
And so when you get a lot of these forces in Xinjiang who are really upset that they can't practice their religion in the way that they want, a lot of it is because they're not allowed to teach their women that they must go out covered up. They must, you know, go into these arranged marriages. Their position is in the home. And ironically, what China is supporting for these women and these people is self-determination, ironically, in many ways, where you're not going to, no, you can't, you are free to practice your religion, but as soon as it starts affecting the rights of others, that's when we're going to have a problem. And this is why, and China has had a long commitment to this, and this is why China is one of the few countries in the world that has a very long history of female imams. They have a very long history of female imams actually, you know, having their own mosques where women go and stuff like that.
Wow.
There are very few other Muslim countries that do this kind of a thing. I mean,
And
I might
that's
be corrected on that, but it's very progressive. It's very, very progressive.
right. And that's the thing, even when I did my interview with Shang Kong, and he showed a video of the uh, uh, people reading the Quran on the public speaker system in the streets of
Oh, the streets
Xinjiang.
are
And
flooded with people, right?
right, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just normal for them. But in reality, um, they still have the freedom to do all this, but at the same time, there are obvious limits that if you start, I mean, I think you talked about this in one of the most impactful videos that I remember when you were taking a tour of the noble's home in Tibet, and I
Okay. Yeah.
always remember it when you were talking about the caste or the caste systems of where people would be, and when your own tour guide wouldn't be where he was at simply because of where he was born, what class he was born. If they were still under the Tibetan feudal society, he would be a serf or worse, a sort of untouchable. And to see how the revolution really liberated these the masses and the folks out there. Um, it shouldn't be seen as something, and a lot of leftists say, "Oh, you're erasing culture. You're judging the culture for it." It's like, look, wait a minute. I'm all for the rights of minorities and whatnot, and to practice what they need to practice and to
Absolutely.
promote their culture and whatnot. However, I cannot stand for their community really needs to adapt to what human rights standards needs to take place. And I don't support the oppression of women, the brainwashing of children, or anything like that. And but I'm also not trying to impose my westernized sort of perspectives on these communities either. And
Yeah.
I
It's a
like
it's a
how
tricky thing.
and I
Go ahead.
like how the Chinese government has not imposed either on these communities the way that the United States or Western countries have imposed on minority and communities and how they have to integrate. It's more like, hey, we need to have a discussion within your community on how you need to change these practices because we cannot allow this type of oppression, but we do want an organic sort of exchange of what can be done to progress women's rights, to help the children, to alleviate or economically develop everything for everybody equally here, and things like that.
And that's the question that a lot of people who are liberal but kind of don't think that China's doing the right thing really needs to examine. They say, okay, you want religious freedom? Yeah, okay, we agree. You want freedom, women's rights also? Yeah. Well, what happens
Mm,
when the two collide? What happens when the two conflict with each other?
yep,
Well,
yep,
in China, you do it the Chinese way, where you think about the community. It's the same reason why
right,
people here during the height of the pandemic, everybody wore a mask. And if they say you're not coming into the shopping mall unless you're wearing a mask, people
right,
generally understand. They say, okay,
right,
yeah, this isn't only about myself.
right.
Now I'm infringing on the rights of others. And so it's the same thing with religion. You have freedom of religion. There's
That's actually a
25,000
good. That's a good
mosques.
analogy. That's actually really helpful because it's like, uh, look, well, even even the most religious communities outside the United States understand that wearing a mask helps the community and helps everybody, and they're not over here though. It's backwards in the sense that we think it's a restriction of our freedom, and that's more our lives and other people's lives are more important to sacrifice than this than this notion of wearing a mask is limiting freedoms, and things like that.
Yeah. So yeah,
So
exactly. So when and so it really ties into a Chinese way. I'm sure other
yeah,
countries here in this region also, where it is thinking about the group. And so if you're going to upset certain extremists that interpret their religion in a certain way, that their intent on having their interpretation of their religion affect the rights of others, no, of course that's when the government steps in and says no. They've got plenty. Like I was going to say just before, was that 25,000 mosques in China. I know there's a Muslim family that owns a restaurant near. Oh no, I moved. It used to be near where
Oh
my
yeah.
old apartment was. Yeah, I'm
Wow.
pointing in the direction like it's still there. But yeah, in my old where my old apartment was, their kids go to the mosque in Shenzhen to learn Arabic characters on the weekends. Like
Right.
this is like it's ridiculous how people believe with all of this data that China has more mosques than all of these Western virtue signaling countries combined.
Right. Right.
You know, they have cultural programs in these communities in places like Tibet and in Xinjiang that would absolutely put to shame any sort of the cultural programs they have in the U.S. for the native populations. They don't
Right.
have them. They don't
Right.
have them. You know.
I mean, it's even worse with the COVID situation here for the Native American reservations. I remember they were having extreme shortages of medical supplies and everything like that. And people, even people in my work try to raise resources for them and try to send them over. And it's like you're relying on literal individuals. I mean, here's the thing. Voluntary associations have been a bedrock for charities in the United States for helping people. And I have a huge problem with that, obviously, because that's not enough of an infrastructure to help millions that need help. When you have a Indian reservation that is lit, or a Native American reservation that is dying from a epidemic, and the government's not stepping in to do anything, and they're relying on these businesses to send them masks. As important as they are, it's just embarrassing how that's our community efforts in helping our sort of ethnic populations or minority populations here, especially one that has been so trampled on throughout history. It's embarrassing. And I felt,
like yeah, you imagine if the U.S. government cared about their own native populations as much as they cared about the Uyghur people. Man, they could
yeah,
accomplish a lot.
so much, so much. I just, again, it as much as they were, trying to promote their cause and everything, I felt so embarrassed as a American. Obviously, that I feel embarrassed as American for a lot of things, but that just adds on to the layer of, wow, we're relying on individuals from my work to provide important resources. Like I bet, didn't I was gonna say, didn't China send masks and everything to cities in the United States, and a couple of mayors just accepted them because they were in such desperate need of them, and they said thank you anyways? I think it was in Maryland or
Oh,
Baltimore
there
or
were plenty of
somewhere.
places. They sent lots of masks. They sent lots of masks, and it kind of went under the radar. The few publications that did pick it up, they twisted it into a pandemic kind of diplomacy. You know, trying
Mm,
to trying to peddle for power by providing these things. They turned it into something evil, which is really weird. When do you
yeah.
remember during the height of the pandemic in the beginning, the U.S. was literally stealing mask shipments from other countries, from
Yes.
allies. They
Oh,
were stealing. They were
embarrassing.
stealing product that was going to Barbados, because I know somebody. I know somebody in the Barbados also, and they stole medical equipment that was destined for them. They stole masks from Australia, from Germany, from
Ugh.
France. There was
They were
stuff that was
confiscating them for
yeah,
some odd reason. Oh,
and then they still have
just
the nerve. Their media still has the nerve to say that when China was sending masks over, that this is something nefarious. Like it was unbelievable. But I got something I'm really proud of though that I want to talk about with that Tibet book and that Tibet incident
okay.
before we move on from that.
Sure.
I got featured on Voice of America. They put
Oh,
my that is like an awesome accomplishment to be labeled an enemy of CIA propaganda. I got a little short
I was
clip
gonna
here for you.
say.
I'll yeah. It's in. It's not in English, but then you'll see on the bottom left corner. I'm just too proud of this. I got to show you this.
Let's see
Here
it.
you go.
Let's see it.
내주들라 격주여칭에 서미라 칸다 다니엘 담줄 프랑스 니 지품에 버지 콘솔 나신 동다 망보인데 자람토니 치기 밀라 콘솔초라 견주 치데 도가라 먼저 라파 마창와체 야메당
Wow. What were they saying about you? I was gonna
I don't
say,
know. It
what's
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't
what
matter.
an
I
honor.
made it.
There
Look,
you,
Ma, I'm on CIA propaganda.
there you go. There you go. Clap, clap, clap.
Uh,
Let's give it up to our number one Wu Mao. That's
oh yeah.
really good stuff right there.
Yeah.
When
So
did this air? When did this happen?
it was a few months ago. It didn't happen right when my Tibet trip was going on. It was happening afterwards because Samira Khan, she posted some stuff about the Dalai Lama, some unsavory stuff about him in terms of the society that he ruled over when it was a feudal society, and the kinds of the brutal things that went on.
Oh,
And the overseas Tibetan community that, like that kid who treats the Dalai Lama as a god, got really upset at that. And she had tagged me in that also. So I joined in, and I got caught in the crossfire, and man,
huh.
it was intense. It was intense. It
Wow.
was all, yeah. It was there were people who came out with songs about us. Also, they did these rap songs, mostly
Really?
about Samira. Samira Khan got attacked more than me,
Huh.
because I think it was a double whammy for her because she was talking about the Dalai Lama, but she was originally from Pakistan and she's a Muslim. And I
Oh,
don't know if you know, there's like, first of all, the problems with India and Pakistan to begin with, but
tensions. Yeah.
there was a lot of attacks against the Muslims in Tibet. The Buddhists don't like Muslims, at
Wow.
least in most cases. And a lot of the footage that was shared from China when China was cracking down on that violence, nobody was reporting on what was happening before that. That Tibetan Buddhist extremists were going and burning down mosques and attacking Muslims, because there are
Wow.
there's obviously a Muslim population there as well.
Sure. Sure.
And so she really got the brunt of it. I was laying into them way more than
Huh.
she was afterwards. She kind of took a step back, and I just kept going, going, going. I'm like,
Wow.
why are these people making rap songs about her? And like, and like, you should be singing about me too, and
You were
attacking
feeling the
me.
love.
I felt left out. And then when this VOA came out, I was like, I made it.
All
Made
right.
it.
All right. You got it. You got it. No, I mean, and that's really that's good that they're actually mentioning you and the works and everything like that because it puts them on the radar and it really does show an impact that's being made. You and the whole channel, as a whole, you reach 100,000 subscribers and everything, and your popularity is just someday I wish I would be,
Oh, you'll be there.
and
You'll overtake. I'm sure
one
you'll
day,
overtake me.
But I mean,
Yeah.
for the most part, it's just an important voice that is gnawing at the heels of these sort of, I wouldn't say, uh, the narratives of the West, and
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
just completely untrue and really poking holes uh, at what they've been doing for centuries now.
yeah.
And
And I
uh,
think, yeah, I think the way we do it too, because you're a very analytical person. Also, you go into detail. You actually study what you're talking about. And although I was having
sure,
a little bit of fun with it, I mean, they were just mostly just trolling me, and I had a little bit of fun with it. And I'm, celebrating being on Voice of America here. But I took a very methodological, I took a very careful approach with how I was presenting everything, and I made sure I put the resources there for everybody to see. Like,
right,
what is my position here? Here's the data to back it up. Here are
yep,
the historical documents with stamps on it to show you what
yep,
I'm talking about.
yep.
And obviously, when they couldn't counter that, it became about a personal attack.
and
Just
that
saying,
and
oh, this
that's
guy.
unfortunate, and that's so unfortunate because they I think there is obviously if you can't attack the facts, attack the person and discredit the person, and
Yeah,
it's such a faulty tactic. I mean, obviously sometimes we do it in court. It's actually frowned upon if you do it in court, but in criminal court at least it's called opening the door. If the defendant starts talking about how good the alleged criminal is and how his reputation is, then they open the door so the prosecutor can attack how bad the character is. And if they are opening the door to you, I mean, just I wouldn't mind flexing. It's like, look, I literally did this list, and you can
Yep.
attack me, but you can't attack this. What are what are you really trying to do? I mean, I do
Yeah,
my
yeah.
hard work, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be, so I was really interested in the guy from Washington D.C., the Tibetan that was there, and so
Mm,
I was following him, and I was looking at his arguments. He did a panel on missing peoples in China, and one of the people
uh,
he was talking about was the Panchen Lama, because obviously the Panchen Lama that was chosen by the Dalai Lama is
mm,
missing, so to speak, and I'll explain, so to speak. That might seem disingenuous in a moment,
sure.
disingenuous, but I'll explain it in a moment. But what what I did was I said, I listened to your talk where you were, on this panel from Washington D.C. and you're talking about the missing Panchen Lama. Do you think it's disingenuous that you didn't mention that the Dalai Lama has openly admitted that the Panchen Lama is safe and receiving a normal education, and that's what you got to. You don't just troll them. You come with something, with genuine questions, and you look at their
Right,
position. I was looking at his position. I listened to his talk,
right,
and he was like, "Oh, well, I don't like to quote the Dalai Lama when I don't need to." All of a sudden, he's not that important, surprisingly.
great.
And I said, but he's saying that he knows under good authority that he's okay, and
Yeah,
obviously there's a whole loaded conversation there about how it really stepped out of line, that the fact that the Dalai Lama just chose him on his own from India, saying this is the next Panchen Lama, when for hundreds and hundreds of years the Chinese government and Tibet together have been using something called the golden urn process, and a lot of the people
wow.
from the religious community from within Tibet was involved in the selection of the Panchen Lama that's recognized by China. I could go into a lot more detail about it, but it's not so simple like the West is making it out to be.
Yeah,
Even the Dalai Lama himself, his appointment was approved by the Chinese central government, and that's
right.
something that I provided documents for, and they provided 400,000 of the currency at that time for his inauguration party and all this kind of stuff.
Huh.
And
Wow.
it doesn't paint a good picture for trying to say that Tibet was always independent, or that the Dalai Lama has
Right.
the ability to just randomly choose a guy. And the other thing I asked him about too, as I said, aren't you concerned that the Dalai Lama, who him and his organizations were funded by the CIA, this stuff has been declassified, that
Right.
they are choosing a CIA influenced choice of the Panchen Lama, who they're going to use as a political tool. They're going to use this child as a political tool within China. Don't you think that's the right thing to do, is to protect his identity?
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't really get any
Any good response?
answers. Yeah.
Well, let me ask
Um,
you. Let me ask you this. This is actually going to be. I don't know how prevalent this may be as an
mm.
issue, but what do you think would be the not the repercussions, but what do you think will happen when the Dalai Lama passes away? Do you think there's going to be a resurgence in like a campaign for everything that he's done? Because we all know that when somebody passes away, there's this sort of remembrance and things like that. And especially since China has a bigger target than it's ever been from the West, what do you think is going to happen with when that happens?
in terms of like the reincarnation, or in terms of the narrative, or in terms of
I guess with the narrative, do you think there's going to be another revamp to a focus of Tibet? So and it's going to be more like we got to free Tibet now, and live what uh, promote what the Dalai Lama left behind and his message and this and that.
Yeah, I mean they're going to lose a really important propaganda tool, that's for sure. And
Right.
I'm sure American propaganda is incredibly sophisticated.
Yeah.
The brightest minds are behind this stuff. So I can't imagine. I'm not smart enough to imagine how they're going to twist it, how they're going to use it. But I'm sure they're going to find some sort of an angle to turn him into some sort of a saint that needs to be remembered or whatever.
Sure.
And if they can infiltrate Tibet with this narrative, then of course they will. How they do it,
So
I'm
my
not
bad.
sure.
Sorry to interrupt again, though. My battery just died for the camera. I got to switch it out one more time. Luckily,
No worries, no worries.
I
Yeah,
got three
but
batteries left.
yeah, I'm gonna share with you guys. Let me see if I can pull up my thread, and I'm gonna put it in the comments here. The thread that I did on that book, where I really go into a lot of details of what was covered in that book, and how it debunks a lot of the common propaganda. So let me see here. Battleground Tibet. It is okay. Here we go. I found the thread. I'm going to pop this into the comments section here, guys. There we go. And yeah, you can take it's a very long thread. Covers quite a lot of stuff. And also that video that I mentioned where the Dalai Lama mentioned that he knows that his choice of the Panchen Lama is safe from receiving a normal education. But there's a few other threads in there that it links off to as well. Let's see. I'm going to take a look at some of the comments here while I've got this little opportunity as Bay is. Yeah, the declassified CIA file showing the 14th Dalai Lama received funding. That's right. And a lot of his community's funding has been restarted. That was part of the reason I saw not only that Adrian Zenz took a pivot towards Tibet, coming out with some Tibet-related articles, but also that a lot of the funding has been restarted. So you can be sure that re-weaponizing the Tibetan cause is going to be something that the U.S. Tries to do now.
Right.
There we go. You good?
Back.
It's going. Yeah, this is going on a lot longer than we thought. But I'm having fun. Are you still okay?
I know. Same here.
Okay for time. Yeah.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I was gonna say we still have to. I don't know if there are any more documentaries that you wanted to touch on.
Well, so I have after this, I've just got some non-political related stuff. More, well, actually, there's one more political related one, which is off in a completely different direction that you would have never possibly imagined.
Oh yeah.
But do you? Yeah, I'll tell you about that in a second. But do you have anything else that you're watching or that's coming up?
I mean, nothing recent. I mean, I'm not trying to watch Tiger King or anything on Netflix right now. But at the same time, there have been some pretty interesting documentaries that are really hit and miss now.
Yeah.
It's you don't know what the agenda is, so to speak, and how to really analyze it, even the political ones. Like I said, I really am looking forward to reacting to the CGTN documentary.
Right.
And I really want. I've seen it already, and I really want to see it with Jing and get her perspective on it, because I know she has some really great insights on what happened with that. And with that, I did want to say that one of the documentaries that I always promote, and I think I sent you a clip on it, is a Huey P. Newton story by Spike Lee, and it's a sort of performance by this actor that looks extraordinarily like Huey P. Newton, and actually sounds like him too. And he does a fantastic job in portraying their agenda and how everything is. And I remember when I watched
the description. Yeah.
I remember when I watched it as a kid. It really turned me on. It actually was one of the more influential ways on how I studied Huey P. and how I got into.
Turned you on to something, not turned you on.
It turned you in. Yeah. It turned me into the Black Power.
It's like, whoa! I got to check this documentary out.
I mean, if you want, that's one way you can get into it, But I was gonna say, like, it really did give me a new perspective on it, because the American narrative about the Black Panther Party, at least the conservative narrative, is that they're the opposite of the KKK, or it's like a horseshoe sort of theory when it came to, they have white power and they're the black power, and they don't like white people and everything like that. And he literally says that's nonsense. Of course, that's not what we're advocating for. We do want to just get rid of oppression, but we understand that what the system is made of, and understanding that through a very personal level. And it's so crazy. It's just 3 hours of him sitting there, but just explaining all this in such a dynamic and interactive way. I think I actually sent you a clip on Twitter. I don't know if you want to show it or not, but it's really fascinating how he explains it and captivates the audience enough for this amount of hours. So I highly recommend it. A Huey P. Newton story.
Right.
It really does
I'll
open
post
the
the link
gateway
one more
to something.
time. I don't have it loaded into my StreamYard, but I'll post the link one more time here. You had a time marker on it also when you sent it to me. I'm
Yeah,
sending you
yeah.
exactly how you sent it to me. But yeah, no, that's good. All right, well, you
Sure.
know what? I'm gonna wrap up with a few less. Actually, no. So one more political thing, which you would
Uh,
never imagine that I would watch, because what it was, I've been doing a lot of watching a lot of Masterclass. I have a subscription to them, and I'm not
Masterclass.
I'm not
What's
yeah,
that about?
Masterclass. So Masterclass is a platform where they have all of these experts where you can learn stuff from them. Like you can learn like cooking
Oh,
from
I think I seen that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Gordon Ramsay, and learn about poetry or comedy from Steve Martin.
Huh.
It's really interesting. And so one came up where it was about the history of American presidents, and you could tell from the trailer that it was definitely going to be glorifying
Yeah.
the American history. And I was like, I got to watch it. I got, what? It's like, I was like, because obviously we've grown up in North America with enough of the
Yeah.
glorification of the West.
Yep.
But I said, you know what, I got to watch it. And that was also inspired to me by watching a different masterclass by Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of my favorite people in the world, where he
Sure.
talked about where he was reading books. Like somebody was asking, what books are you reading? And he says, oh, I'm reading a book on UFOs. I'm reading a book on this stuff and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, and they're like, but you don't believe in any of that stuff. And he said,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like he wants to know what the conversation is going on all around him. He wants to know
Interesting.
what's being said on the other side. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna be inspired by him. And although as cringeworthy as I think this will be, I'm gonna watch it. I actually ended up really enjoying it.
Really?
And let me play. I've got a clip. I think I've got a clip of it here. Oh yeah. So it's by this by Doris. She's a presidential historian. She's consulted for Obama and all this kind of stuff. A very, very wise person. And I'm going to play that trailer for you now. I think it's about a minute and a half.
Sure.
Here we go.
What I'm going to do in this class is talk about all the fundamental skills of what is needed to be a great leader. As Teddy Roosevelt said, human nature is the most important thing to understand if you're a leader. So I will use examples from the 4 presidents I know the best: Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, and Lyndon Johnson. Each one of these presidents was a leader during a time of great crisis. We can learn from their failures and their ability to acknowledge those failures and learn from their mistakes, to use the lessons of history to apply to your daily life. I'd love to just transport them into you. The most important thing for a leader to develop is the ability to grow. All of us in our lives are going to suffer difficult times, and the question is, can you get through it? Can you grow through it? Can you learn from it? I think about Abraham Lincoln. He scoured the countryside for books, and he read everything he could lay his hands on. He understood that he was a work in progress. Nobody's going to be perfect. The most underappreciated leadership strength is the ability to relax and replenish energies. In our world today, so many of us feel we don't have time to take off, to relax. But that was important for all these leaders. There's something about the creativity of the mind that through quiet and serenity can break through from the struggles that you're having every day. That's what I love about history. It can really give you perspective, solace, and give you hope. Think of what you learn from parents, from people who have experience. You're learning from generations that lived before us. It makes you feel you're part of a continuum. You're not just here alone. So it makes you a deeper person and maybe even gives you that great thing called wisdom. I'm Doris Kearns Goodwin, and this is my Masterclass.
Huh.
Yeah. So
Pretty interesting.
yeah, like you look at it and it's like, oh, this is going to be a glorification of, but you know what? It was
Right.
actually, it was really good. I think I came away with the sense that in most cases, to reach the highest position of office in America, you have to be special in some sort of a way. As we've seen recently, it doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily mean special in a positive way. And I got
yeah,
I got the feeling that a lot of these people who got to this level, they wanted to do good things, and I think it ties into what you said before. They become a part of the system.
right, right,
There's a lot of the principles that they went in with, the things that they wanted to accomplish. A lot of them were great things, but they also did terrible things. Even Abraham
right,
Lincoln,
right.
would hang. I believe it was him who hung a number of Lakota natives.
Mm-hmm.
And all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Like it's got a tainted history, but it seems like they're just a product of a broken system, which seems to be getting more and more broken and more
I
worse.
mean,
Like
and that's the thing.
yeah,
It's really. I think it does take a very keen eye to see that you know leaders that arise in this country. There is a sort of hypocrisy when one is glorified, but the dark, the secrets are kind of buried. And that's why I really liked, for example, the way China approached Mao Zedong's mistakes.
mhm,
Even though Mao Zedong was he was the founder, he was the person that founded what China is today, but acknowledging it and, face first into what he did wrong and the Cultural Revolution and everything, but still uh, legitimizing his legacy and what he did for the people. It really did save face in what they did. And I really wish that Americans did that more with their leaders. I really wish that there was something that, look, we got to admit
yeah,
that these leaders, yes, Abraham Lincoln, for example, freed the slaves and really pushed to legislation and everything, but there was dark things that he did as well. But acknowledging those mistakes don't necessarily lighten the fact that he was fighting to end slavery. And obviously there are other things that have happened. I was gonna say I would love to see a masterclass of that very same thing, but of like uh, Mao, Deng Xiaoping, Fidel Castro, Thomas Sankara, and all these other presidents to
that'd be
see what
amazing.
kind of
Yeah, that'd be
leadership that
amazing.
takes.
Yeah,
But
but the accountability thing. One of the things, part of the system in the U.S. is that they yo-yo between two parties, and it's just like you can almost like kind of wash your hands of that was the last administration, and then that was the last administration again. You don't have
mm,
that luxury in China. This is there's way more accountability in that sense, and there's no getting around this with this, you know, artificial moving between two parties, which are actually more or less the same bloody thing. You
right,
know,
right.
um, it's really remarkable. I mean, there's a lot of great stories in there about some of the things they did. One thing that I really liked too was hearing about Eleanor Roosevelt.
Mm,
She had this thing, because I had this like when I was in Canada, I had mixed feelings about us as visible minorities getting
right.
favorable treatment for certain things, or to be
Mm,
certain government departments having a quota that you need a certain number of minorities. I had very mixed feelings about it, and didn't know whether I should process that as a different kind of inequality in the other direction, which could potentially cause resentment. But with Eleanor Roosevelt's example of the press meetings that she used to hold in
mm,
the White House, she invited only female journalists,
right.
and it created a system where all of a sudden all of the major publications needed to find very talented female journalists, cultivate them, or bring them up if they wanted
Mm,
access to this. And
mm,
it was, would that be unfair to a young male journalist who really wants to cover it and had nothing to do with the oppression of women? Yeah, maybe, but maybe this is what was needed. It's
right.
like this thing that I used to have mixed feelings with, where they say same treatment isn't necessarily equal treatment, but you got to see
Mm,
where was the starting point. And it would be the same for African Americans. All of a sudden, they're free, but their white counterparts have had generations of a lead, where they've been able to build up generational wealth and own
right.
property. You expect them to just, what they say is, pick up their bootstraps and catch up to everyone else. Like,
right. And I
so
think there was that book, I think it's called The New Jim Crow, that really dove into the failure of Reconstruction and how even after the Civil War and everything like that, uh, I mean, there's just so many things that uh, there's a liberal band-aid that is attempted, whether it's affirmative action may have been in the right direction, but it definitely is still fighting against that conservative notion that misquote, like using MLK quotes to fight against affirmative action. Like it goes so against the um the notion of what it was trying to fix. But at the same time, it's like, well, in reality, there is a deeper scar with minorities being oppressed in the West that is going to take so much more than these sorts of things. And I think you're onto something, feeling uncomfortable with it. Um, and but at the same time, it's like, the notion that we want to be just as assimilated or treated like any other Westerner or anything like that. I don't. That's not our aim either. Our aim is more like, hey, we want to be proud of our community. We want to have an actual history that teaches us the good and the bad of what happened in our
yeah,
community and how we surpassed the struggle to be where we are today as a people. And uh, not only giving us equal rights, but giving us a proper reparation for what has happened, because we need as a community some sort of healing to recover from such damage, some historical damage that has been done. And I think this is the next step. I mean, there are some leftists out there that demand for example, the balkanization of the United States. That there's going to be a breakup, and Native Americans deserve their portion of the land here, and like the South has to be broken up, and this like that, and parts of the Southwest has to be returned back to Mexico, and things of that sort. Very, very fascinating stuff on how leftists are theorizing the balkanization of the United States. But I would have to say that I am very fascinated about that. I don't know where things may go with that. Not that I say that I don't support it. I just don't know too much about it. I really have to dive into that theory a little
yeah,
bit more.
yeah. It's also something I don't really know how to process as well. But I just found the Eleanor Roosevelt example just interesting. Where
Right.
I think it probably created positive change, where these mostly male-dominated kind of news companies then were in a scramble to get high-quality female journalists to be able to go in and cover these events. I think that was probably a good thing.
Right.
How it fits into the
Definitely.
bigger picture,
And it,
I'm not. Yeah,
like you said, it does open the gate, and it does show that, and it did show. I'm assuming that when you had women press being just as competent as male journalists and whatnot, there was a obvious opening saying, hey, the other can do it better. But at the same time, it's like, well, if they can do it better, we can probably pay them cheaper for it. But that's probably that's a different story on wages and whatnot, and exploitation. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and then other than that, actually the masterclass. I'll mention one other one. I did a. I feel like they should be sponsoring me. I'm not.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
I was gonna
affiliated with
say,
them
are
at
you
all.
getting paid for this?
Yeah, I know. I just played their commercial, and now I'm going to show you what because actually they had a masterclass by this guy. He is
Huh.
Matthew, the science of sleep. So he's this
Okay.
guy who studied sleep for decades and everything like that, the science of sleep. I did that one too because for the longest time I've had really bad kind of sleeping situation, and this was for years where I don't insomnia kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm dealing with that now
But
too. But yeah,
yeah, it's I think when you get involved in social media, it gets even worse because there's so many things to think about. I mean, even if
Yeah.
all the comments were 100% positive, it doesn't matter because it's still like sensory overload when you get to the point where you've
Right.
got tens of thousands of subscribers and stuff like that.
Right.
And you've just got so many things going on in your mind. But what I found that did was I slept better after watching it. Not necessarily because I implemented anything that he said, but
Huh.
I think for me, I feel like I've got to understand how things work. And when he kind of demystified the science of sleep and you understood, like he gets into all the details about your receptors and how they work, how your melatonin, goes into action, how we're dark deprived creatures, where before, as it starts to get more and more dark, your body starts to produce more and more melatonin, but we don't get the darkness that we need anymore towards the end of the night. So he turns, and then also when you drink coffee, what it does, it blocks the receptors that are designed to release, I can't remember any of the technical names, but it releases something to slowly tell your body how long you've been awake so that you can start winding down by the time you get to your sleeping time. So knowing how my body is like working and doing everything, I felt like I just put my mind at ease more. I'm like, all right, I know what's going
Interesting.
on.
Huh.
Yeah, they had some technical, they had some other things like, so sometimes I'd get a really bad night's sleep, like 4 hours or something like that. And he says, sleep isn't like a bank where you can make it up later or something like that. When you lose a night of sleep, you've lost it. And he says, avoid the temptation to take a really long nap in the middle of the day. I know there's certain societies that take long naps, siestas and stuff like that. But he's saying actually it doesn't work. If you want to do it, you just do like 15 minutes. That's it. Because you're going to be, when you sleep, your body gets rid of all of those, that buildup of whatever that compound is that will slowly tell you that it's time to go to bed at night. So I made some little changes and stuff like that, but it was really good. I've been sleeping really well since I watched it, just from understanding how things work.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
how do you sign up for these classes? By the way, you're kind of
So
convincing me, but
they have two options where you can buy a single course or you can pay like an annual fee and then you get unlimited access. So I got the unlimited access. I watched some stuff with my son first, which was the Chris Hadfield space exploration, which was really cool. They have Penn and Teller teaching magic, which my kids really enjoyed watching, also learning some magic tricks. So I got the annual subscription, and I stopped for a while, and then I was like, I really want to get the use out of this. So I started kind of really binging on a bunch of stuff.
Nice.
But yeah, I am a total shill for them right now, and I'm not even getting anything out of it.
I was going to say, we've been talking about
I have,
this for a couple of minutes now.
I have no affiliate links to share. I have I just think it's good. It's a good system. And they've got.
I was going to say, I
content.
definitely want to check out that sleep one because it does sound pretty good.
You know what? I'm going to try to send you afterwards because it says I have a guest pass that I can share. I don't know if that means if I share it with you, you're going to be able to access everything you want. But I'll try it. I'll send you this guest pass that it says it has. I just noticed when I logged into it here. And then
yeah, by all means, I'll love to check it out. I'll actually check out that sleep one. Because I definitely would love to get my sleeping patterns in order. Not to. Yeah, not to bore anybody with details with what's going on with my life, but right now it's been kind of hectic because I filed my very, very first case on my own in federal court on a very complex matter, and I was just like, staying up, trying to figure things out, and getting minimal assistance from a partner, and not only a partner, but a person that's been really on my back. Like if something goes wrong, for example, we were trying to file something, the petition, and we had to take out some sensitive information. But the thing is that the case involves sensitive information. So we're like, what should we do? And the partner was like, why didn't you know this before? Why didn't you do this? Like, oh God, okay. Look, I'm gonna figure it out. Don't worry. And this is a kind of procedure. Even the court, it's very unique to the point where even the courts didn't know what to do. Like, we were trying to talk with the clerks and everything, and we finally got to figure it out. But it just puts another additional stress level that keeps you awake at night.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of attorneys where I'm at, they have these A-type personalities, and when you crank up that sort of stress that you have to be a perfectionist every time, it really, like, you stay up for days, and it's just so stressful. And
Yeah.
I really would like to see. I don't know if the guy teaches any techniques for this or
He does,
whatever,
yeah,
but
yeah. He teaches about techniques. He talks about things like when you take it's better to sleep in a cool environment than it is a warm environment.
huh,
Your body temperature is expected to drop down and stuff like that when you go into these REM states of sleep. So if you get a choice to sleep a little bit on the cooler side, go on the hotter side. And actually, what seems to be contradictory, if you take a hot shower just before you go to bed, it helps your body cool down because actually, when
right,
you take a hot shower, your blood kind of comes to the surface, and then when you get out of the shower, it acts as your body temperature reduces very, very quickly, and it puts you in this
interesting.
state that is going to be a little bit more conducive to sleeping. Having a system at home where you could reduce your lights, at nighttime, like maybe have turn on less lights. That's the thing he kept focusing on over and over, that we're a dark deprived species.
Huh,
That would help too. And there's a few other things in there too. He talks about the half life of coffee also, and why you
interesting.
don't have any coffee after 12 because of what it does. He talks about alcohol acting similar to what all of the sleeping pills, how all the sleeping pills work. Also, is that it sedates you. It doesn't actually put you into a state of restorative sleep. It
Huh,
sedates you. And so you'll have with alcohol, you'll have a very disturbed sleep to begin with. But when you're in a sedated state, you don't go through the same kind of deep sleep, deep REM sleeps that you need to refresh yourself and
right, right.
reset yourself the next day. A lot of interesting information in terms of how when you go to sleep, there's an action that happens where everything that happened in your day, your short-term memory, it gets put into your long-term memory overnight. It's kind of like this process where it's almost moving from the RAM into the your
Yeah,
permanent
like a
hard drive.
download or something, huh?
Yeah, and I've heard this on one of my favorite podcasts is Radiolab, and they did an episode on that too, where sleep, this idea of this phrase "sleep on it" actually is way more literal than people realize. That if you're trying to solve a problem one night and you're going at it, you can't figure it out. A lot of the times, the next morning, when your brain has had a chance to take all of your memories and consolidate it with the rest of your long-term storage memory, all of a sudden you can solve that problem much better. Just really,
Interesting.
yeah,
Huh.
really, really interesting stuff. Um, and
Good
yeah,
stuff. I was gonna say,
we're wait. Yeah,
was that the
sorry, go ahead.
documentaries you wanted to hit on too,
You mean the Radio Lab?
or
The
no? I know that you said that you had some non-political documentaries that
yeah.
you
That's what.
wanted to.
Yeah. Because as we're wrapping this up, I thought I'd end on some non-political stuff and just some. We're off topic, but quite deliberately because we've gone through all the other stuff. So the only other thing I'll mention too then is I'm listening to an audiobook, which is one of the best, most fun audiobooks I've ever listened to.
Really? Huh.
Yes. Well, first of all, it's based on it's like a behind the scenes of one of my favorite movies. This is going to sound really cheesy, but one of my favorite movies is The Princess Bride.
Prince.
Oh man,
There you go.
I have seen that like 15 times, maybe even 20 times. I've watched it with my kids again. And
Wow.
so there's a book here that was written by Carey, the guy who played the Man in Black, called
Uh-huh.
As You Wish. And I'm listening to, so that's the image on the right is for it. And the audiobook actually is, it's the people, like the actors and the crew and stuff like that, they're reading their parts in their own voice. Like he introduces them and they're talking about it, and you really feel like
Wow.
you have like gone through the entire production process with them. I'm not all the way through it yet, but it
Uh-huh.
is so much fun. You hear them talking about it, you hear the things that happened offset. I love hearing about Andre the Giant. I mean, Andre the Giant was an
Right.
amazing man who
Right.
was a man who was in constant pain his whole life, but was one of the happiest people, like outward, like just makes everybody around him happy. I mean, of course, some
Wow.
people were scared of him. They said the biggest, baddest dogs would be scared of him, would run away from him. Like he was this
Yeah.
massive giant
Of
of a man.
course.
But I love I love hearing about the cast's stories about Andre the Giant. And no, it's just so much fun. It's a
Okay,
really fun.
I gotta check it out then. That's another thing
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
gotta check out.
Have
'Cause,
you must have seen Princess Bride?
I'm gonna be honest. I only seen clips. I have not seen the whole
Oh
thing. Yeah.
no, it is just so. It's just such the perfect kind of storybook, like it's even read in a storybook manner, and
Wow.
just the
You
the
know what? I'll
cast
do. I'll
works
do.
so well together. Yeah.
I got. I have some time next weekend. I'm gonna watch the movie, The Princess Bride. I'll watch it for you, and I'll
Gotta
let
do
you
it.
know how
Yeah,
it
you gotta
goes.
you gotta be. It's like it's not really a deep movie or anything like that. It's just a fun, like I mean, it's reached a status where people who are fans are like mega fans, and they can recite like
Wow.
the words from the movie. I'm not going to give any of it away, but yeah, you definitely got to watch it. Yeah.
Will do. Will do. I'll watch it next week then. I'll let you know when I finish it. I'll tell you honestly what I think. But from what
Yeah.
I've seen at least in the YouTube clips, it looked really hilarious sometimes. So
Yeah, it's funny. It's like it's a style of movie making that I just haven't seen in a long time. There's an
mm,
innocence to it. It's got the right amount of adventure. I think there's few movies. There's a lot of movies you watch when you're a kid, and this is a movie when I watched when I was a kid. You watch movies when you're a kid, and when you were a kid, the movie just transported you to a different world, or it just like it was
wow.
just such a great experience. But then a lot
Yeah.
of those movies, when you're older and you watch it as an adult, you're like, I don't even know what I saw in this movie. It's kind of like whatever.
Right.
But this
Right.
this is one of the movies that you still, when you watch it, it's got the same charm. I'd say the only other movies that really do that for me are Hayao Miyazaki movies, from the Japanese, Studio Ghibli. His movies, the
Right.
same thing. Like when you
Love
watch
it.
them when
Love
you're
it.
older, they transport you, to
Yeah.
his entire world.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
if you're putting that on The Princess Bride on that level, then yeah, I gotta watch it then because
It's you gotta be in the right mood for it too. You just something easygoing. You don't want something
sure.
heavy. You just want to relax. You got to be in the right mood for it. And yeah, I definitely do recommend it. But did
Fun
you have
stuff.
anything else? Anything else you wanted to add? Then we've been going for over 3 hours, so it's
Yeah,
quite
we
a
reached that limit. Oh man, I wasn't even expecting on top of a long day, but I'm really glad that we did it.
yeah. It was
Um,
fun. It was fun.
yeah. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me on again. I hope we can just continue doing this again, or at least these kinds of live streams. Next time, I hope I can have a live stream and you can have a live stream going at the same time, like we discussed
That's right.
before.
That's our plan. You're getting your channel set up so that you're going to be able to live stream. Hopefully, once that's approved, we
Right.
can. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We can stream to both channels at the same time. That'll be really good.
Exactly. So, and that's our plan. We got so many plans on what's going on over here, and we'll obviously be in touch with what's going on. Hopefully, sometime maybe by the end of this year, I'll be able to travel to China, maybe.
That'll
But
be awesome.
I'll obviously want to, see go visit your brewery and things like that as well, and
Absolutely.
have a good pint with you. But in the meantime, uh, yeah, I really want to say that we're still gonna, focus on China and other countries as well with doing all this stuff. We're gonna try to do more collaborations with Carl Zaw. Really loved the interview that we did, and hopefully we can work with him more. I know we've been trying to reach out with Xinjiang and other people from China as well, get a really uh, kind of ground sense of what's been going on there. And we are also doing this sort of news commentary, quick little snippets where I can just get on camera like this and just talk about what's going on. For
Yeah.
example, if we had it set up for the Capitol riots, we would have just jumped on the very next day and talked about it and posted
Yeah,
a
that's a
video
good
like
idea.
that.
I like that. I
Yeah.
think there's going to be a lot of stuff unraveling. I think that there's just a bunch of stuff going on right now that we still haven't fully comprehended or really
Yep.
understand what's going to happen or what the implications are. I really think we're seeing something going on where a combination of Republicans being censored, obviously Trump being taken off, Ron Paul, one of the most anti-war politicians there are ever, having
Right.
his Facebook restricted.
Right.
And then the disenfranchisement of a lot of these extreme Trump supporters who leave a lot to be desired, but who have fallen out of love with the Republican Party because of how they think Trump has been mistreated by a lot of that side, has
Right.
created a situation where it's going to, I think the Democrats are going to come out with a lot of power from this.
Yeah.
And it's kind of ironic in many ways too, because I think that a lot of people thought that, will Trump become like the first dictator of the US, where
Right.
he just seizes power and he takes over, when actually I think what we're seeing unfolding is the complete opposite.
Right.
Which makes it look like it's happening in an organic way, but the Democratic Party is going to become so powerful from this.
But that's the thing. It's like a silent radical side on the right is brewing, and it's becoming more silent because it's getting censored from these major corporations, but they're festering, and I wonder, the recent crackdowns with the FBI and everything, how that may affect these sorts of right-wing sort of movements. And we always say, we better be prepared after Biden for a Trump 2.0. And it'll be very interesting to see how that goes.
These people are being pushed underground. They feel like they've been, violated.
Right.
They really believe, they truly believe in their version of right and wrong. And that happens in other places in the world. I've seen that happen in the UK when they censored Tommy Robinson off of their platforms, who's very Islamophobic kind of a person. He went underground into Telegram, and where they just fester in their echo chamber, and it's something that's going to blow up. But in the US, I think it's considerably more scary, considering that these people are heavily armed. They have weapons. They have a lot of people, like you said, who sympathize towards them within law enforcement. There's just a lot of scary stuff going on in the U.S. Michael Moore's talk that he had, he did an hour-long kind of live stream. He was talking about, he has it under good authority. He's seen the posters and everything like that. He thinks there's going to be a lot of violence on Inauguration Day. He posted it to warn people, and it was censored off of Instagram, so they're trying to push that down. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, but I definitely think we have. I don't think we've seen the end of it.
Of course, and that's the scary part. And you've seen the pictures of the soldiers sleeping on the floor of Capitol Hill and everything. Kind of, when that's ever happened before, it's been pretty stunning. At least for most Americans that aren't used to that. But I got a front row seat, trying to see what's going to happen. We'll see how the inauguration goes. I'm probably going to do our first report after the inauguration, whatever may happen. Try to give our interpretation on our side, and go from there. But otherwise, 2021 is probably going to be a ramp up from 2020. So here we come.
Yeah, it's crazy. But onto the main point. So yeah, we can maybe jump on for some power sessions once in a while to cover a specific topic.
This for sure.
I'd like to do more of these, and then we could keep it shorter. And this is kind of a build up, but we haven't spoken in so long. We had so much to talk about, especially on the books that we're reading and stuff like that. But
seriously.
Yeah, let's wrap it up here then, guys.
Sure.
We were up at like 600 people. I think they know we're ramping down, so we're down to 480. Thank you everybody for joining, and definitely look out for the next one.
All right.
Have a good one, guys.